We are recording. So,
Hello.
how's it going?
All right.
I feel like it's been a
Thanks for
long
having me.
time since we've had a
It has
chat, and especially had a recording. So,
far too long.
right? Um,
Things happen way too fast.
I can't keep up. Like honestly, like I Hate Dogs and has been covering stories, and I can't keep them straight. Like sometimes it seems like there's been so many recently with like kids
Yeah.
involved or just I saw a post on Reddit, I think yesterday, about a police. I think it was an old story though, but I just saw it yesterday. But there was a police dog that had attacked an innocent pregnant woman,
Hmm.
and it
I
caused
did see
her.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess whatever laws are in place basically made the police not liable for that, for her
Right.
injuries or the incident at all.
Because they said because they said the police did not direct the dog to do that.
Right, so the dog is literally like a loose cannon with teeth.
Right.
I mean, what is the point
Yeah.
of having a police dog if they can't be controlled? I thought the point was
I
that
have
they
some
were the
strong
most,
opinions.
right?
Hmm. I mean,
Have
we know about even the fact that their effectiveness is highly questionable. They did that experiment where uh, it was a study. They had an empty room. Empty meaning there were no drugs in the room. Then they had the drug dogs. They told the handlers to take them through the room and find the drugs. But plot twist, there are no drugs. 85% of the dogs in the study pointed to drugs. An 85% failure rate. Imagine any piece of equipment. So you imagine your officers out there, they got their vest. You ever talk to an officer lately? They're wearing they got like body armor, tactical things, ammo clips. They got all sorts of gear and weapons. And it's like you point to any piece of equipment they have strapped to their body and say it's got an 85% failure rate. They'd question wanting to take that into the field, but no,
right.
they still call dogs officers. They still, which I find interesting too, because it's putting the canine unit on par with the human officers, it's saying like, well, they're all the same.
Yeah,
They're
no,
all the
they
same
they
thing.
literally do because I'm pretty sure that if you attack, or really, I want to say, defend yourself against a police dog, you'll be
Correct. Yeah.
charged the same as if you assaulted like a police officer, basically. And they're
Hmm.
given state
Yep.
funerals and all kinds of stuff. It's truly insane. It's just more of the dog culture madness. And the really terrible part of this story was because the woman who was attacked was pregnant, and so
8 months pregnant. Yes.
because of her injuries, she was put on painkillers, and her baby was born addicted to like painkillers and had
Mm.
to be weaned off of painkillers like as a newborn. So that's the kind of stuff you get in a dog worshipping society. And I could go
I'm
an entire hour on just this topic of police dogs being used. I've mentioned before on Animal Uncontrol, or when I had Animal Uncontrol on for the Juneteenth episode, I talked a lot about the use of police and military dogs against civilians all throughout history. So this goes
okay.
back quite a ways. Uh,
It's funny. I'm doing a quick search on this, and I'm seeing an article from 5 months ago. Is this another pregnant woman being attacked by a dog? Like, oh yeah, this is a different one.
yeah,
This isn't the police dog. This is a loose dog attacking. Yeah, okay, God, yeah. How many pregnant women have been attacked by dogs this year?
right.
Oh goodness.
All of these things happen a lot more than I think people realize. And something that's bothered me for a while, and I'm not prepared for this call because I don't have sources, and people are going to ask, "What's your source?" Now, I'm going
It's
off
very
memory.
impromptu.
It's an impromptu, which I
We
like.
shoot from the hip here. We shoot
Right.
from the hip on sheepy shows.
It's more
Yeah, that's right.
organic. It's more. I think it's organic. But I've seen so many cases. Well, it's hard to even keep track of the number of them. But what I was wanting to say is like, it really bothers me that this news doesn't really reach wide audiences because it's simply not at all reported on, or if it is, it's kind of a passing note on page 10 of a newspaper or whatever the equivalent for that would be in a digital
Right.
form. But you'll see this really upsets me. You'll see these massive like news segments on like primetime television news about dog adoption events and oh the shelter's overflowing. Here's our furry pal, whatever dumbass mutt. Please come adopt him. Like they'll do these huge segments on like adopting dogs or like dog shelters and things like that. And you don't even get like a fraction of that coverage for something like, you know, local pregnant woman attacked by police dog, police not held liable, we should do a full scale investigation, our journalists are on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like just a passing, it's, I don't know. You could probably put it in better words than I can. I'm struggling right now, but
Oh. Well, it's all part of there's a larger narrative that they don't want to go against, and it's that dogs are great, dogs are better than people. Everybody get your pit bull, get your rescue dog, put it in your house with your children, your dangerous, your dangerous sport dog, your fighting dog, blood sport dog.
right.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, how it's here's a running theme I'm going to possibly bring up if I
Okay.
remember to a couple times, but I've just kind of had this revelation that this whole thing, and I told you about the incident I had. I actually don't want to go too much into detail with it on calls
For
in
sure.
case there's any litigation involved. But I had a volatile incident with a nutter a few weeks back, and I walked away from that, and I realized how nothing is on our side. Our meaning those of us in the anti-dog community, those of us who realize that this is a problem. None of the institutions are on our side. Businesses, police, news media, they're all pro-dog. And
Yes.
what I realize is that it's like a gigantic wave of human stupidity. Like imagine you're in the ocean, knee deep in water. And there's a giant wave coming 20 feet tall, about to crash down upon you. And no matter how much you scream, no matter how much you flail your arms, no matter how much you try to make reasonable, rational arguments, none of that matters. It's just a big wave of something greater than us that's coming our way. And I don't know, this hopefully this isn't going to sound too gloomy because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. The sense that we're not winning. Like this isn't a winning fight. I think I told you that before. We're not really coming out on top of this. If you stick to the anti-dog communities, like if you listen to shows such as this one, or if you find a new channel on YouTube and you say, "Oh, they've got really great arguments. Oh, it's so great to see a new channel." Or you're on some Discord or Reddit server and you see, "Oh, look at all the new people making comments." You may think if you stick to the cozy comfort zones of these anti-dog safe spaces, you're gonna maybe start to think, "Yeah, we're rising in numbers. We're winning this fight." But oh no, get out there. Get out there. Look at the news. Look at what's being reported as you were just saying. Look at how the police react when involved in these situations.
Oh
Look
yeah.
at how businesses react. And you
Absolutely.
realize, no, we're not winning. We're the absolute minority. And it's a big wave of human stupidity that's moving in a certain direction that I think it's not so much that we're going to be able to change it. We just got to kind of weather it until
We have
things get so
to,
stupid that maybe,
right. You have to
maybe
like
things will
just
change.
ride the tiger. You have to just the only way, you know, the only way is through it. I
Hopefully that's not too defeatist. I mean, I'm big on state of mind and being positive and all, but you gotta also have to be realistic with situations and realize, this isn't we're
There is
not we're
such a
not
thing
winning.
as
If
toxic positivity. So I totally get that. And I'd like to be optimistic, but also realistic. So, yeah, and it's easy,
can
like
I
you
can
said.
I
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
can I just say real quick? Now, I mean, I'm stuck on this point because I wanted to find the article about the pregnant woman attacked by the police dog,
Hmm.
and I'm just doing a search. Police dog attacks pregnant woman is what I put in the search bar, and I've got a plethora of videos here and articles. They're all different stories. Loose dog attacks pregnant woman. Pregnant woman attacked by pit bull in front yard. Police dog attacked pregnant woman. This one's from years ago. Like this isn't this recent one. Pregnant woman attacked in Dallas. How many pregnant women are getting attacked by dogs?
Yeah,
and,
I
and, and
know.
nobody's batting an eye. Like how many of these stories do they need to be?
I
And there's already been police dog attacks. This isn't like a really unique thing. There's one from February. Police dog, yeah, pregnant woman attacked by dog. Oh, okay. Yeah, what can I even say? There's so much of it.
No, you're totally right. I mean, uh I have the same issue. Like I said, I can't. Sometimes I try to go back and find a particular story that was on my mind, and there's so many similar stories, and that I get flooded by all the number of them, and can't find the particular one I'm looking for, or find the one I'm looking for and a dozen others just like it. It's really insane. Maybe an interesting
From
idea.
May,
Hmm.
I'm sorry, from May of this year, Georgia mom mauled to death by 13 dogs in front of her children.
Ugh,
Yeah,
13 dogs. You said.
yeah, 13 dogs.
Yeah, that's. I've said this before. I said this on a voice chat not too long ago. Somebody asked me because I live. I don't know if you remember, my neighbor that moved in about 6 months after we moved in. Immediately constructed, like the first thing she did upon moving in was build this massive fence. It's like a chain link fence, but it's like way taller than normal. It's not like a 5 foot or even 6 foot fence. I swear that thing's like almost to her roof line. And these homes have like 10-foot ceilings. Um, so it's like at least 8 feet tall, chain link. And then there's a strand of what looks like electric wire inside the fence. So it was clear to me that she knows these dogs are needing to be contained. Like I like to I call it the Jurassic Park fence because it looks like she's trying to
Right.
hold dinosaurs back there or something. But
Right.
anyways, she moved in, and also she built two chain link kennels inside of her garage. So the garage never is used for parking their cars. It's housing at least three pit bulls last I counted, and one appeared to be heavily pregnant or had just like birthed a bunch of puppies because it got out and was running around, and its teats were like dragging on the ground almost like. So anyways, someone asked me like, how do I keep myself feeling safe and my family safe when I live next door to these like 15 dogs in the backyard and like three or four pit bulls and a Great Dane that she always lets loose in the front yard. Um, and I've called the sheriff, like nothing can be done because we live technically like outside city limits, so there's no leash laws. There's not even a limit on the number of dogs you can keep. So I the sheriff told me I can carry a gun and I can shoot the dogs if I feel threatened. And that's it. That's all they could do for me. My issue is I don't think I could defend myself even with a gun if five, six, seven dogs were attacking me at once.
Right.
I'm a decent shot, but like dogs are fast. Uh, they're not that large. I mean, these are big sized dogs, but you know what I mean. It's like a smallish
Yeah, they're a small
moving
target.
target. And if there's
Right.
one circling behind me and two or three in front of me or like all around me, like how am I gonna if I'm trying to shoot one and the other one's latching onto my legs or arms, takes me down, like I'm
Right.
toast. So even with a
Right.
gun, I don't feel like I could really protect myself in the event that they get out.
That's a fair point. I've had similar like when I walked past there was a house close by that had two giant German shepherds and they didn't have the Jurassic Park fence. They had like a 5 foot tall and the ground sloped in a way that, the German shepherds can jump, by the way. They're a strong that's one of their traits people know that they're very vocal and they can sure jump. They can clear a 5 foot fence, no problem. So
Easy.
that's a clear hazard to me to see this. It's a woman that has these two giant, super aggressive German shepherds, and the first time I saw them, because I'm just walking by I'm just walking down the street, and suddenly, blam! Like they slam up against the fence, and rah, 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 uh, jumped out of my skin.
Oh yeah, German
And
shepherds are scary.
I think to myself, one would be bad enough to have to face down, but two's like you're dead. Period. One
Right.
dog you have a possibility. I mean, I can give you one tip, not to sound too bravado. A lot of times when people give you dog tips, they're not always realistic. But
Right.
one thing to know about dogs is that if it's one dog, dogs really can't wrestle. Like
Right.
they're scary because they can bite and they have sharp teeth and they can do all that stuff. But if and that's of course very deadly and dangerous if you're not proactive in counteracting it. But if one dog comes at you and it actually gets hold of you, you can technically just basically drop your body on top of it. And
Yes.
it's like it can't you get a certain advantage in wrestling, let's just say, in grappling, and then try to find a way to work its teeth away from you and whatnot.
Right.
But two, no way. What do? You drop down on one and then the second
Grabs your neck or
second
any
one's getting
part
you
of your
from.
body. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
No, I'm sad to say this because this is the world we live in, but I have mentally pictured these scenarios and how I would react. So, also one of my previous jobs was in a company that employs, I don't want to give too much away, people who are in the field and need access sometimes to equipment or meters and things that are in people's property or property lines, easements, and things. And so they're
Oh
coming into
my.
contact with people's aggressive dogs on a daily basis. So one of the things we
Hmm.
had, every employee, whether we were field employees or not, were required to go through like a dangerous dog training. And it's the same BS you get from these trainers who are like, "Oh, stand still, be like a tree, like use pepper spray," or like, you know what I mean? They can't say shoot the
Right.
dog like you're on the
Right.
company clock or whatever. They're not going to let you carry a weapon. So yeah, like ineffective at best techniques. It's mostly like stand still and hope it doesn't rip your throat out.
Right.
So
And
anyways,
they also don't want to give you anything that might potentially harm a dog. So that's
yes,
why it's so ineffective. We're not going to give you any information that might actually harm a dog. Can't do
right.
that.
So I've
You just have
pictured
to hope for the best.
exactly other scenarios or like how I would actually handle um, an attack by a dog. And like you said, the way I have always envisioned it, if it was one dog, is chances are it's going to latch onto me somewhere. I'm not going to be able to fully defend myself against its mouth, at least for like a bite. So I always imagined like it probably latches onto one of my arms, and then my best bet is to like mount it like in a wrestling style,
Yeah,
on its like
exactly.
get back control, and then wrap my legs and arms around it enough to try to like hold it still from injuring me further until hopefully like help arrives. Like that's the best
Yeah,
outcome I hope for. But if it's more than
that's
one
kind of yeah.
dog, it's
No
I
way.
can't do that. And so what do? Well, I carry a like a 9 mil. It's got like 15 rounds. Um, Hopefully those are enough, but like, you know, it's possible it's not. So I've even thought like, should I carry a melee weapon instead? Like, would I be better off going to get my mail with like a machete instead of a gun? Like, first world country.
Right. Yeah. And then, of course, you'd have to look into the laws of because, like where I live, it's all highly regulated. Like you can't carry many things to protect yourself, really. Yeah. It's almost like we've been disarmed against it, and then you get bad advice, which disarms you even further. It reduces your protection by saying, "Well, here's what to do," and it's like stuff that'll get you even more killed.
Right.
And
Stand
then,
still so it can rip your throat out more easily.
right. And then let's have laws and regulations that just allow these sort of ridiculous circumstances. Like your neighbor with all those dogs. See, I told you, like where I live, there's actually a limit on how many dogs a household can have. I forget if it's two or three, but there's an actual limit by law, which I'm sure many people, don't know or care about. But you said that where you live, that's not the case, and that she had, what, nine or something? How
I've
many did you say?
counted 12 or 13, I think,
Wow.
uh, just in the
Yeah.
backyard. And like I said, I'm pretty sure she stores more. I say stores. She stores more of them in her garage.
in the garage. 'Cause, yeah, what a novel concept, like using your garage for parking cars. That's one thing, like dog owners, like everything is for dogs.
Yes.
Even if you have to kind of convert its function. So garage, what's the design of a garage? Well, it's for housing and storing your motor vehicles. No, no. If you have dogs, it's for housing your dogs. Actually, that story with the 6-year-old, I think I told you in our pre-call call, where I get overwhelmed sometimes when I'm hit with the stories, especially when children get unalived by murdered when they get murdered by dogs. And I, against my better judgment, I looked at some of the stories, and it was right away going out into how well the dogs were being kept in the garage, and the young boy opened the garage, so it's his fault. And it's like,
Right, or he opened a
what?
fence or unlatched a gate. I've seen multiple
Yeah,
stories like that. They always try. The other thing that peeves me is in cases like this, the police uh, come out and say we're doing an investigation. It's under investigation. What are you investigating? You're not you never are investigating the well, this is changing some, which is good, but usually they're not investigating the owner's responsibility. They're investigating how they can frame it so they can blame the child or blame some other outside force for the dog
right.
killing someone. You know what I mean? And
I do.
on the opposite end, you see these news reports where the police come out in supposed cases of like animal cruelty or abuse or whatever, and they come out of the gate swinging. They're like, "This is the scum of the earth. He kicked a dog. We're gonna do everything to the full extent of the law." Like, I don't hear them say
Right,
that about people whose dogs kill a child.
right.
I would call them the scum of the earth. You know what I mean? If I was on TV and I was investigating a woman, like a recent story that's on my mind, a woman had two like mastiffs or some kind of mastiff, huge dog that killed that little
Very
boy
dangerous.
because
Yeah,
he opened the door. They're not on TV
right,
calling her the scum of the earth for endangering a child like that, for harboring dangerous animals. You know, you get in trouble for harboring criminals, but you don't get in
right.
trouble for harboring deadly animals. You know what I mean? It's
Especially
just,
someplace where a child could have access to them. So I mean, that's
and it
bad
wasn't.
enough that you're harboring dangerous animals, but it wasn't related to the child.
No, no, sorry. I was going to say it wasn't even like the child showed up unexpectedly. She was
Oh,
expecting the
okay.
child. Apparently,
Right.
I think it's, if I remember the story correctly, the grandmother. I don't really know why. I don't know the details, but the grandmother dropped the child off at that house so the woman could take the child to school or something like that. Like I said, it didn't really make sense to me because if the grandma's dropping him off somewhere, she couldn't. Why couldn't she just drop him off at the school? Maybe the timing is off or something. I don't know. But I guess the boy had like it wasn't the first time he was there, and he had been
Right.
warned to stay away from the dogs, so she knew they were dangerous. Is what? So she's a criminal to me in my mind.
Right. Well, child endangerment. Right.
Yes, they should all be prosecuted for endangering his life, and not just endangering. He lost his life because of the ineptitude of the adults in his life, because of their nuttery,
And of
because of
course,
their devotion to a foreign apex predator, species that's not our own.
that tidal wave of human stupidity. I say that if a saner species would have eliminated these things the very first time a human child had been killed.
Yes,
Like the very first time would have been all it would take to say, no way, we can't have these things in our neighborhoods around our children. They kill our children. Can't
right.
have that. That would be a sane society, but we don't live in that. So we have. I don't know the story that you're speaking of, but I'm guessing. Here, let me do. I'm going to put on my little magic hat. I'm going to guess. I'm going to like predict that were the dogs spared? Were
I
the dogs
think they were
saved?
euthanized by two. I'm
Oh,
googling it now.
okay.
Yeah, which
I'm
is
gonna throw away this magic hat. That
well.
one, yeah,
I mean,
that one didn't work.
I want to say that you were not wrong in assuming that because so many times we see them not being
Right. Oh,
euthanized.
they fight hard for it. It's not even that it's just, well, they just end up not. No, I mean, there's like people protesting, there's online petitions, there's all for the rights of the dogs. Oh, they're just misunderstood. They're just doing what dogs do, you know.
Yeah. Here I found
They
it.
deserve a
Portland
second
boy,
chance.
6, fatally mauled by family friends, 2 Great Dane Mastiffs. Attacked him inside a
Mm,
garage
those are
before he
huge.
went to school. They're huge, yeah. And my neighbor, one of her dogs that she always lets out. I've joked about this dog being like her boyfriend because she always has that Great Dane with her. It's almost never
Mm.
contained like in a
Is she
fence
is
or
she is she joking? Is she joking? No, that would be now. There's an interesting conversation topic. Yeah, is she really joking about that?
I don't have the energy for that one today, but sometime.
That would be more like a race. Let's do a Valentine's Day episode
Oh my
when
god,
we
that would be
have
hilarious. Let's do we actually definitely should do that. I'm holding you to that.
that rolls around. Okay,
Yes, when
make a
Valentine's
note
Day
of it.
rolls around, clear your calendar. Because we have
I'm
got some
actually
stories.
I'm actually writing that down in my little nutter notes.
Good,
I got a little
good deal.
like notepad here.
So
Yeah,
speaking of Nutter Notes,
we'll
I
try to
wanted
do.
to mention this really quick because I know we also both like statistics, and something you said earlier reminded me to Google this because I know people, and I've seen this phenomenon of people buying homes specifically for their dogs. So
Hmm.
here this
Yeah.
says 33%, according to a recent survey by SunTrust Mortgage, 33% of millennial home buyers decided to buy a house because of their dog. The survey found that millennials are now leading the pack of home buyers, and their dogs are one incentive driving them to take the mortgage plunge. The survey asked recent home buyers why they were buying their first home, and their dog was the third most commonly cited reason, coming above children and marriage. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's where we're at. Then that's the dinkwads, right?
that's
That we
what I was
talked
gonna
about
say.
before.
We talked about that before. This is the dinkwad. So when you say rising tide, I unfortunately think that you're right. Like, the boomers were bad enough, but the millennials have
Yeah.
definitely exceeded um, all of that with their devotion to dogs um, and their, I think, child free numbers. And
Well, I
then,
think
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say because I was thinking about this recently too. I'm often thinking about the past and causality and how things kind of come to be. So I'm constantly kind of like retracing steps of history and like how did this become this and this become that. I had some pretty profound thoughts recently on this, but uh, regarding the millennial generation, remember that they grew up with a lot of like that peak golden age Disney films,
Yes,
Lion King, you know, all these movies with anthropomorphized animals that were, you know, singing and making meals and having fun and getting married and do all, you know, whatever it is that they do in the movies. That's why we have so many Nalas, you know, all the pit bulls named Nala.
that's true.
That's straight out of the Lion King, right?
Right.
So um, the millennials were 100% conditioned throughout their lives through media, through movies, through internet. They lived a whole lifetime of dogs are great. Dogs are, you know, they're smart and they think and they have, you know, complicated emotions and thoughts and they can understand human speech and you know they have magical powers they can do and that's where we get all this craziness like well yeah you know like service dogs can do all these magical things and you know dogs have all these abilities that they don't but people believe they do because they kind of grew up with this very magical thinking regarding what dogs are and what they're capable of and that's specifically like when I think back like my generation so I'm Gen X and I'm old enough to remember when dogs lived in dog houses like I saw this transformation of culture occur back when I was a child, dogs lived in dog houses or in your backyard. Maybe you'd let them in your basement if you had one, but you didn't have them sleeping in your bed. You know,
Right.
you didn't have them riding in a shopping cart and take them to the grocery store. Like people understood that they were dirty outdoor animals. We had
Yes.
this big transformation occur. So millennials specifically, to kind of get back to my point, that millennials specifically grew up indoctrinated with these thoughts. I think they're the first generation really to get that, whereas the previous generations had not. Sure, the boomers are pretty bad with their dogs, but yeah, millennials are on a whole different level because
Yes.
it's like ingrained into their being. And they think like they talk to their dog with the baby talk, and they think that their dog understands what they're saying. And then and then they get the stories about like how the dog, what was the thing I was seeing recently about how the dog saved the family from a fire, like, the dog fireman, like, uh, or like when people with the service dog thing. Oh my goodness, all the crazy. We should talk about service dogs a little bit.
Yes.
Uh, that I looked recently at the ADA guidelines. Uh, Been a while since I did that. And they're different now. Probably the last time I looked was at least a year ago. And I had some recent run-ins, and people with their dogs in the grocery stores. One woman pushing the dog in a baby stroller. I think I told you about that one. Like I opened, it was
Yes.
like a small corner store, like a grocery store. And I opened the door to enter, and I start to see a baby buggy like rounding the corner. So like kind of my instinctual, oh, okay, I'll step back, I'll hold the door so this mother with her baby can come through, right? Right?
Right.
No. And
You would think.
as it's getting closer, I'm like, well, wait, yeah. As it's getting older, oh, this woman looks pretty old. And then I look in the carriage and it's, like this dirty little rat looking thing. That's not a baby. And
That's
it's
not
like,
a baby.
it's all hitting me what's happening. That's not a baby. And I'm holding the door and I'm like, I remember feeling very kind of angry about it because I got tricked. I got snookered. Like my instincts got used against me. Here I am, like it was like a humiliation. Now I'm holding the door for this thing I despise, dog, with an owner that took it into a grocery store. So like, I'm just like I should be slamming it on them. But no, I got tricked into my nature was used against me. I got tricked because of the baby carriage into holding the door for them. Anyway, all that caused me to, I'm contacting health departments and all that stuff. Well, I got one of the health departments came back and they're like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. They said it's a service dog. The owners know who that is. Here's the ADA rules. And they sent me the link. And to which I responded to them. Actually, it's rare to even get a response from
Yeah, I
uh,
have never gotten a
health
response back.
department these days. I used to get like before I used to, it was standard, and then they stopped. And this time he responded back, and I mailed him back. I said, can you please explain to me what possible service a dog in a baby carriage is providing? And he never got back to me on that. But anyway, I looked at the ADA rules, and they're different now. They've been expanded upon. Now, all those crazy things that people just make up on the spot. Well, like when you listen to people like, oh yeah, dogs can like detect they can smell the acid content in your perspiration and determine what your glucose levels are, or they can detect your breath and tell you if you're going to have a seizure. Like it's like fantasy stuff. There's no basis in reality to any of this. That a dog can be trained to detect these and then has uh, the agency to say, oh well, I better alert my owner. They're like, oh, I can tell, I can
Yeah,
smell
no,
that
they're not doing that.
your yeah, your blood sugar is a little low, so I need to notify them, and yeah, that's not happening. This is all magical thinking. I think in any other field, and people who, especially in the society that allegedly is so pro science, and they're all about show me the data, show me the facts, and all that allegedly. And then they'll accept an explanation of, oh yeah, dogs they can just sense when you're about to have a panic attack, and then they notify you, and then they cure it. Or then they lay down on you. Like if you have a seizure, they lay down on you and it like cures you or something. No basis in reality. Anyway, big point. I know I'm sorry, I went on a long tangent, but
No,
the point
I
is
liked it.
that this is a distinctly millennial phenomenon. This disconnect from objective reality that I think it's just because they were really indoctrinated. It's a whole generation indoctrinated into this mindset.
Yes, and you said a very, very interesting term uh, when you were describing that previous story with the woman with the stroller. You said you felt
Yeah.
humiliated, or it was like a form of
Yeah.
humiliation. Well, Are you familiar with the concept of humiliation rituals?
Of course.
It kind of feels that way, right? Like, it feels a little bit like the whole dog thing is a massive, like, social, society wide humiliation ritual in so many ways.
Can see where you're going. Yeah, especially in how they're elevated above us in terms of their importance and they're, like they're better than us. You hear that all the time. They're better
Yes.
than us and you should love them. They have more rights and you should never harm a dog. Oh, what kind of evil person would hurt a dog? Like
Right, or
always be
even
nice
when
to
people
dogs. Yeah,
who are dog lovers, you'll see this, not even in like the dog free circles, but among dog owners themselves, sometimes they'll seek help from each other over a particularly problematic dog, or they'll say, I'm sure you've seen these. It'll be like a desperate woman who's like, I'm so worried this dog is acting aggressively towards my toddler, or I'm like pregnant and the dog's already acting aggressive to my one child and now I'm gonna have two, and my husband doesn't want to get rid of it, or blah blah blah. Um, but I really think the best thing is to rehome or do behavioral euthanasia, stuff like that. And they're distraught about it because they're dog nutters themselves, and but some part of them
right,
recognizes how dangerous it is, and they've already spent thousands of dollars on training, and they've got all these muzzles and training aids. Or they'll, one thing I see is they'll literally cordon off part of their home with, you know, gates and things, so the dog gets part of their home just to itself, or they'll give it a whole room dedicated to just the dog because it's so aggressive. Anyways, they've done all these things, it's not working, they're very scared for the safety of their child. And what do they get from their own, community of dog lovers but humiliation? Oh, you're
right.
terrible to even think about it. He's your child. He was there before the baby. You need to continue going to the ends of the earth to try to make it work with this dog. It's, they don't get any support whatsoever if they start expressing the need to remove this dog from their life. They're hit with a lot of vitriol from, these supposedly people who are compassionate more than, supposedly dog haters are heartless, we have no soul, we hate animals, we want to hurt and abuse them. Well, I don't even have dogs. Like, how am I abusing a dog? You know what I mean? You guys are locking it up, putting
Mhm.
muzzles all over it, like giving it Xanax every day. Like, but yeah.
I saw a dog recently. Uh, I saw a dog recently that was in a front yard without a leash, without a tether. It was just in the front yard. I've seen this a couple times, and I can only guess that they've got some sort of electronic collar that I don't know how exactly they work, but I think they have a range, and then they give the dog an unpleasant sensation when it goes too far. Uh, and I walked by it, and I actually had a moment of sympathy. Now, mind you, I despise dogs, and
Right.
I actually need to make a redaction to a show we did, like one of our first shows, where we had this kind of at the end. We both had this sort of like said, "Oh, it's not really about hating dogs; it's about loving people and all that." And I thought about it after, like, no, no, no. Actually, I hate dogs. I actually do hate them, but I don't think they shouldn't exist.
I
But
agree.
I had this moment of looking at this thing because it looked really distraught. Like I could tell by its body language that like the tail was tucked and it was like had that like it was feeling uncomfortable, and it was sniffing kind of at the edge of the grass. And I think what was happening was it must have had an electronic collar on, and it probably reached the border and was getting whatever it is they get, and was trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening, why is this happening here? Like what's
Mm-hmm.
this? And it was like sniffing and trying to, of course it can't. There's no way it could comprehend what's going on.
Not at all.
I had a moment of sympathy for a living thing and saying that, these people like don't want anything to do with that dog. They're just going to stick that collar on it, put it outside, because like nobody was interacting with it. Just stick it outside, leave it out in the sun. There's nothing out there. There's no food, water, stimulation, nothing. It's just an empty grass yard. Just leave it out in the sun. And then if it goes too far, it feels unpleasant. I had a moment of, these dog lovers don't really care about their dogs either. They don't they don't really care. The people that allegedly supposed to care for them the most, they don't really care about them. They don't really care about the dog as an individual, like as a being.
Right. No,
kind of that
they
point.
pretend to. It's all very performative as well. Like we always talk about.
Now,
Oh, what's the word?
virtue
Virtue
signaling, it's a new
signaling.
form of virtue signal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's a very yeah. It's like you said. It's more than that almost because we've been so brainwashed and manipulated into viewing them as supernaturally good, almost like angels in a
Yes.
furry body, like crazy, like levels of
Well,
um,
they're not only furry supernatural angels, but they have a detection system of who is good.
right.
See, this is a key, like you've heard this one, right? Dogs can tell who are good people, and all good people love dogs, right? You hear
Yes.
this, and this is ingrained, and even people who've never given this subject a shred of thought are going to ape this at some point, and they'll have some stupid dog that's going to start licking on them, and they'll be like, inside, I guarantee, inside they're going, oh, well, I better show everybody that I'm a good person and not react in a negative way to this dog. And I
Right.
hope that the dog approves of me. They're hoping that too. I sure hope the dog approves of me. I remember a young girl, young, she was, college age, but I'm I'm so old now, Yeah, college age girl who I used to chat with, and she was one day showed up uh, with a big gash down her lip,
Ooh.
and oh no, what happened, right? And I mean, it's for a woman especially, like any kind of disfigurement to your face, that's really a psychological blow too.
Yes.
But she's explaining the story. Well, I was at this party, there was this dog, and so I bent down to kiss the dog.
Ugh.
I'm like, oh,
With predictable outcomes.
and of course, yeah, all I could say in the moment was, well, what did we learn about strange dogs and putting your face near them? But when you unpack that and you think about it, what was going through her head? She had to be thinking, well, here's a dog. I must show everybody that I love the dog and that
Yes.
the dog loves and approves of me because I'm a good person. I know maybe a person's not really going through that exact dialogue in their head, but if you break down what's happening, they're trying to appease these 2 points which have taken hold in our culture, that dogs can detect if you're a good person and that all good people love dogs. So what better way when I see some strange puppy, I'm gonna go bend down and kiss him on the head, and he'll be all like ooh, like licking and being happy, and approve of me and show that I'm a good person, and I show that I'm a good person because I love the dog, and I mean, to summarize, it's all insanity. It's that big tidal wave. It's a tidal wave of stupidity,
Right.
but there's no basis in reality for it.
Right. Like you said, I
Mm.
think it's almost to the point where it's subconscious. Like you said, she's probably not having this exact dialogue in her mind, but that dialogue is happening somewhere in her mind. Like it's just an unconscious. It's almost like a trained response. Like see doggy, pet doggy. Yeah, like you must show
Hey,
supplications to
say good
doggy.
boy.
Yes,
Yeah,
he's a good boy.
yeah,
He's
say good boy and get them
yes.
to wag their tail, you know? Yeah,
Right.
show and so but you're showing everybody. Look, because people have, too, again, they grew up with this delusional like the heroes in films are always like pure-hearted and good and like, birds land on their head and like they're holding a squirrel in their hand and like a deer is rubbing up on their, you know what I mean? Like the
Right.
nature scene of like the Disney princess or whatever. Like
Yes.
this is in people's cartoon reality, their cartoon brains that
That's a
they've
really good
got,
way to put it. It is
programmed into them.
a cartoon reality, a disconnect from reality itself. And to hit on this point, there's a story that I've seen covered very little, even among um, the dog free communities. Uh, but I'd like to cover it a little bit here on the idea of dogs sensing good people or having some kind of
Yeah,
like, heart of gold sort of thing. So this story,
very easily dispelled. Yeah, let's
yeah,
let's get into this one. There's a lot of ways to dispel this.
this
Right.
story is from Gaza. And here, a 24-year-old with Down syndrome and autism was killed by Israeli army dog. Um,
Mm.
they were invading this family's home, and this boy He's 24, but I'm gonna say boy because mentally he's probably like 8. You know what I'm saying? Like he's got Down syndrome. He's unable to really do anything on his own, so he had to still be cared for by the rest of his family, as even as far as eating, bathing, everything. He's basically like a child in a man's body. So they kicked the family out of the house, and he was unable on his own to like leave. And while they were being kicked out, they saw the dog latch onto his arm, start attacking him. They were prevented from coming to his aid. They were forced to leave while he was left there, being attacked by a dog. And eventually they were able to come back to their home and found his decaying, mutilated body on the floor of their home with blood all over the house because he'd been attacked and like drugged through the home. Um, so this pulls several points together, I feel, which we started talking about police and military dogs attacking innocent people and being used to harass, intimidate, torture, and also the dog having a complete inability to determine what a real threat is or what a good person or bad person. I mean, is a 24-year-old unable to move on his own and care for himself, who's mentally disabled, physically disabled, is he a bad person that deserves to be, terrorized and mauled and killed by a dog, and that's how his life comes to an end? Does that show that dogs have
Oh,
any
he was
sense of compassion or any sense of right versus wrong?
he was a vulnerable person, which is the dog's target of choice. That's what
Right.
dogs always love to kill, is vulnerable people. Yeah, and that's to me, that's not a very heroic or noble or higher like a good. That isn't good supposed to fight against oppressors. They're not a tool of oppression, but
Right.
that's what where do you see dogs ever used in that in a sense of fighting oppression? Let's just say they're always used in an oppressive situation.
Yes, they're unable to do anything such as fight for liberation or aid the escape of slaves, for example, or they're unable in any way to do that. They're tools of the oppressors and have always been. That's one of their uses throughout history and still today, because they're like a sword or a knife on legs. They're like a weapon that you can release. You know what I mean? Um,
Yep.
an uncontrollable
But
weapon,
like
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 they, yeah.
oh yeah. Well, I've got 2 points right now. So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned the sniffing dogs at the airports now, which I was unaware of as a thing now.
Oh yeah,
That you gotta walk past that.
that was a
You're now
first for
forced to
me.
interact with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tool. That's a tool of oppression. And what if you're allergic? 20% of the population is allergic to dogs. Now you got to be exposed to a sniff test just to fly a plane. That's one thing. And then I'm thinking about how on there's a video, I should try to find this one. There's so many, right, about police dogs gone out of control. But one where they were stopping a trucker, and they had it like it wasn't even like a problem situation. I mean, the guy wasn't coming at him with weapons or anything. He had his hands up and following their commands and whatever. But you had the knucklehead with the canine. Of course, he just wants in on it. And at some point, he releases the dog, which was completely unnecessary. And the dog ran toward the guy they were arresting, and then turned around and then charged at one of the cops and attacked him. Like the dog doesn't know what the heck it's doing.
Right.
And then they somehow got, okay, no, 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 don't. The handler's like, get away from him. And then the dog went back to the guy that they were arresting and then attacks him and like starts tearing his arm open. And it's like, he's a compliant, non-resisting suspect at this point. Why is he going to be mauled by a dog? But just because it's just this tool that they just want to use it on somebody.
Yeah, no,
Kind of
I
reminds me too.
1000% agree. They were very aggressive. When just walking through security, the dog handlers were weirdly aggressive. Sorry, I know you have another point, but
No, I don't. No, I'd rather hear your story on this if you want to talk about it. Yeah, talk more about the what it's like dealing with those
yeah, it was
airport dogs.
strange. So
It's a new one.
this, yeah, I've never experienced this personally. So it was new when I came into the airport and I was going to head towards security. I was getting my, boarding pass and ID and all that stuff. And suddenly they start ushering me towards, I see this like tunnel constructed kind of out of like plexiglass, like tall on the sides but no roof. So there's this like tall plexiglass area, and they start directing me towards that. And um, I see the dogs and these two handlers, and they're basically like making everyone line up so they can walk one by one. Like you have to wait until the first person goes through. And so they tell
Wow.
you like, okay, go. And you walk and they're like, keep walking. Like it was so very like aggressive. And then
Yeah.
the handler, as I'm walking through, makes this noise like he's literally like tss, like the Caesar Milan noise that he always makes. But I didn't know what was happening because I've never
Oh,
done this before. He's
the
like
the
tss, tss.
the
Like yes,
the
yes. So I like froze because I thought he was saying like I thought he was
he was trying to
signal
me.
something to
Yeah.
me. Yeah, because he did it right by my face, like as I was walking past. So I like froze and looked, and he was like, "Keep walking, keep walking." I was like, "Oh my god!" So I just like kept going through, and it was just weirdly intense. And the dog
Yeah.
looked like it was doing like the dog looked like it was trying to lay down. It was bored. It was I don't know if it didn't even look like it was sniffing. The guy kept having to like point, like he took his finger to the dog's like nose and would like then motion to like people's bags as they were walking through, and the dog would kind of lazily just like kind of sniff at the bag. Like nothing about that looked convincing to me that the dog was actually
Yeah.
doing anything. And then my favorite part was at one point after I'd gone through, I was just watching this scene as everyone kept walking through. The guy, the handler, got like a ball out and started bouncing the ball for the dog, like I think to try to get the dog to like I don't know, like pay attention or liven up some. It was just weird. The whole thing seemed very like security theater.
Yeah.
Um,
I was about to say it sounds like theater.
yes.
Mm.
So, but yeah, that was the first time I'd seen like a dog checkpoint at the entrance before I went through the actual TSA lines. So that was
And
weird.
of course, you really have to question the efficacy of such a thing. Can these dogs really detect anything? And when I say you have to question, I mean a thinking person would. But the thing is that obviously it's a thing, it's happening, and nobody's questioning it. Like, what's the point of this? Does this even do anything? Or is it simply sort of psychological theater
Right. And
so
like what
that
is
you,
it
you can have people
trained?
shouting
What
at
is
you?
it supposed to be looking for? Like drugs, bomb making materials? Like what is this dog actually trained to do?
Right.
Like
Well, you know that dogs' olfactory senses are actually hyperdimensional, and they can detect things like in the spirit realm and across like different dimensions. So they're highly sensitive. So if you have anything that could be considered contraband, they'll know, and they'll know to point it out to the handlers.
right.
Uh, yeah,
Well, I managed to
because
slip
they're just
by
that awesome.
my heretical thoughts, so luckily it didn't sense my thoughts. I shut down my
Well, you were very
brainwave,
lucky. It
so
might have
yeah.
been Yeah, it might have been a hat you were wearing. Did you have earrings on? There's all sorts of things that may disrupt the electromagnetic frequencies.
Right. Well,
Uh,
luckily I didn't have
that
a hat
yeah,
because that can make dogs want to kill you. Wearing a hat's
I've heard that
a
actually.
gamble around a dog.
Yeah, have a hat. Don't have a hat. I mean, there's all sorts of things that might trigger a dog. You really just don't know. You
Right.
know.
It's impossible to predict, but the ways of dog.
I actually knew.
Dog works in mysterious ways.
It's funny you say that one because I knew somebody personally with a dog that got aggressive with people wearing a hat. I was like, what? How is that a thing?
Completely normal
But
pet
yeah, he just goes.
behavior.
It goes crazy when you see the guy with a hat. That's it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let's trust our lives to these animals. Let's, yes. Yes. Service, they employ them as service, they're life-saving service dogs. They do valuable police and rescue work. Right. Right.
Yeah,
And of course, they can tell if you're a good person. See, that's what they were really sniffing out when they put you through the plexiglass tube. It was to detect if you're a good person.
right.
They weren't looking for contraband.
No, I
I
guess
know
I
if you're a
made the
good
cut.
person. Congratulations. You've been approved by dog.
My dog. Dog has approved for now. He can, dog gives and God takes away. So dog gives and dog takes away. So he can take away his
Right.
approval at any moment. And that would be my fault.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you said that because that rounds me back when you were talking about the distraught dog owners on Reddit and they're starting to finally kind of break free of it and they're like, look, this is like I'm making me miserable and then of course they go to their peers who then, browbeat them back into submission. That reminds me if you've ever studied cult behavior. That's a part of cults and how when a person
Yes.
starts breaking through the programming and then, because they don't have a social sphere outside of anyone in the cult, then of course they turn to the cult with their impure thoughts and feelings, who then have to set them straight.
Right.
So many cult elements in the dog culture.
That is
Yes.
true. Well, that's why, I mentioned humiliation rituals because that is a tactic used by cults and groups like that to create, like, I guess, like trauma bonds or different just ways of psychologically manipulating people. It's a very effective because humans are very social creatures and we hate feeling, well, most of us hate feeling embarrassed or ashamed. It's a
Right.
very
Yeah.
effective control technique to use shame and humiliation and things like that because we want the approval
Right.
of our group. We want to be accepted and have like social circles. So yeah, the dog culture has kind of like society wide implemented these tactics of humiliation towards us for not liking dogs, or they call us names, they dehumanize us um, for not like worshiping dogs. Um,
Yeah. And it's a submission to the dog. So then you're bending like the airport thing is an example. You're bending to the dog's superiority. So this dog has these abilities to detect, like if you have hidden contraband. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we joke about the good person stuff, but we can even say, yeah, they can tell if you're a good person or if you have evil intention, and if they have hidden contraband. So once again, oh boy, everybody probably stiffens up and stands, and oh boy, the dog better approve of me.
oh yeah, it was super
The dog,
tense.
yeah, the
Yeah,
dog better
that's
approve of me. So like, I got to show that I'm a good person. It's that same psychology. So you're submitting to the sort of superior senses of this stupid beast.
yeah, that is a really good point. And like you said, the hyper aggressive handlers, the dog owners, they want to be able to.
Yeah.
They get off on
Oh, they're just itching.
that control.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
One other
Yep.
stat
They
I
just
wanted
want
to
it.
read from this article was just that 33% of millennial home buyers are buying chiefly due to their dog, right? But it gets worse. So, of those millennials who don't yet own a home, 42% of them surveyed saying a dog, present or future, is a key factor in their home purchasing decisions.
All right.
And then they
Of
say,
course.
certainly this was true for 25-year-old Gwen Werner and her husband. They just bought a house so they could get a dog and not feel guilty about the pup being cooped up in an apartment all day. Quote, it felt inhumane having a dog live in a third floor apartment without any space to run around. I'm glad that was our route, as we have a dog who has way too much energy for an apartment. They
Oh,
bought a
God.
house in May and then rescued a German Shepherd mix in June. So, the first thing they do, they move
Of
into a new
course.
home, is get a dog. And then it
Get a
says,
hyperactive, dangerous dog,
yeah, a
by the way.
hyperactive danger dog that's now introduced to their neighborhood. And they don't have
And that
kids, so
and
what do they
that
have to
German
worry about?
Shepherd, German Shepherds in particular, very high maintenance. Like the crazy hyperactive German Shepherds you see is because they're left at home all day, and then the owner comes home and like puts them in the yard for 5 minutes, and then they go bonkers and bark at everything that moves. And yeah, they're not burning off all that that excess energy they'd get from wandering around with normally dogs, they're a roaming, they don't need. I saw a great video about this. Was it canine, maybe something about the fact that dogs don't need homes.
Yes.
They're a yeah, they're like a roaming animal. They don't need they don't need a house the same way that humans need shelter.
Right. But this is saying, so then it says real estate agent Lee Fowler in the Winston-Salem area of North Carolina added that just
There's a
under
lot of
half
history
of
there.
his clients are millennials, and all the time they mention their dogs. A lot of times they'll go into a house through the kitchen and walk right to the backyard and say, "This will work perfectly for my dog." Or they'll look to see whether there's a fence or if they can make one for their dog. Sure, yards are great, but what about a dog washing station? Millennials are also on the hunt for a home that has deluxe amenities for their dog. Our sales center has found that millennials are particularly attracted to dog related amenities, said Marilyn Osborne Patterson, marketing director and legal counsel for Norton Commons in Louisville, Kentucky. Demand has been really strong, so we just completed our third dog park. All of them include entry vestibules for safety, fresh running water, and seating for pet owners. Millennials favor parks and walking trails, and an active lifestyle along their dogs. So we added pet waste stations to keep things looking good. Well, we know they don't use those. There's dog crap
Right.
everywhere.
Right.
In new home
Well, they're
builds,
optional. Well,
oh yeah,
you see, if I may just real quick, see that the pet waste stations and the dog parks, see those are obviously for dogs, but everything else is also for dogs too.
right.
So the dog parks are for dogs to play in, but the regular parks are also for dogs to play in. And the pet waste stations are obviously for dogs to deposit their waste, but everywhere else is also for the dogs to deposit their waste. So I mean, you just got to understand, it's all for dogs, all for dog and dog for one, something like
Yes,
that. I'm
yes.
pleased. Please continue.
Oh, so um, let's see. Oh, in new home builds, this really disgusts me. In new home builds, we see a lot of people putting in dog washing stations. It
Ugh.
could seem a bit over the top, but it's actually not that ridiculous when you consider that millennials tend to regard their pets as family members, arguably more so than any generation prior. Millennials have grown up in a different world than boomers and Xers, and it has impacted the way they see dogs, says Laura Sheenan, author of The Dogs of
That's the only
Avalon.
thing. That's the only thing she said so far that made any sense.
I mean, see, this is the interesting thing. They're right, but they come
Yeah.
to the wrong, like an opposite conclusion of us. Like when we
Right.
say it, it's crazy. Like basically, it's one of those situations where it's like, if you say yes, this is true, but that's a good thing, okay, that's fine. But if you say this is true and it's a
Right.
bad thing, suddenly, no, it's not true, or you've come to the wrong conclusion. Like all of these articles always come to the conclusion that this is all a great thing.
Right.
We're not allowed to think this is a bad thing. Um, blah blah blah. Anyways, it just goes on, and it says the exact same things you were saying. Back in the 70s, my parents thought they were being good and responsible dog owners by using punishment and choke collars. Now we know dogs respond better towards positive training and reward-based punishment. Oh, and
All right.
here's a good here's something that millennials have been heavily brainwashed with. Still cheaper than kids. While
Mm.
more millennials are still becoming parents, there's still quite a few. Wait a minute. While more and more millennials are becoming parents, there are still quite a few who are waiting to have kids or who've decided not to have children. And not even the fanciest digs for your dog comes close to the cost of bringing up a baby. A dog is flat out cheaper than a kid. Well, it's cheaper in every way,
Well, I
right?
mean,
It's cheaper in
well, I mean,
emotionally and
I mean, a can of Pringles is cheaper than a ribeye steak, but only one of them is going to give you amino acids. It's like
exactly.
there's a different value in what you're paying for. It's probably it's kind of a shame actually, for the sake of entertainment, that you don't see my face right now, because as you read all that, I probably went through so many different facial animations reacting to these different things. I was putting my hands over my eyes. I felt quite animated in that moment, and I feel like just about everything that was written in that article was so utterly stupid, and it could be deconstructed just crazy. Like everything that was being said, I'm like, oh my God, no, wait, stop, no, stop. Like I don't have the article in front of me, but if I were to break through it, I could go through it in an annoying level of detail and go through everything that I think was wrong there. But as you say, they're coming to the wrong conclusions. Like they're pointing out, I always go back to the idea of the dogs with the oxytocin in the brain and how, the dogs hijack the human bonding pathway. That this is a known thing now, that they actually they hijack, they ride, they piggyback upon our brain chemistry that's designed for humans to bond with other humans, but the dog can activate it in our brains too, which is why people form these strong bonds and they think the dog is like their child or lover.
Right.
But then the conclusions that they write is like, oh, this is a good thing. Like, no,
Yes.
no, this is horribly dangerous. This is horribly bad.
Yes.
If you told me to like a sane culture, if you say, wait a minute, there's an animal that can get you to, it can trick your brain into loving it like it was your child, and you'll like, you'll at the expense of other things, even your own children, you'll take care of this thing. You think like a sane culture would say, oh yeah, that's great. That's a great idea. Let's get more of them.
Right. No,
Uh,
no
give
sane.
us give us more of
It
these.
would be like telling, uh, those wasps that lay their eggs inside of like a beetle, and then the beetle,
Yeah,
like it hatches in the beetle, and that's the food for the larva, for the wasp larva. And you find this
yeah,
like desiccated husk of a beetle with like a wasp crawling out of its head. It's like a horror movie. It's like imagine telling
right.
those beetles that like, hey, would you guys like to introduce this like species that's able to take over your body and your brain? I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's kind of
Yeah.
similar. It's like, is it really good
Oh,
for another
that's exactly what it
species
is.
to hijack your brain and body uh, for its own purposes, for its own benefit, to your
Right.
detriment?
Well, I mean, the answer is clear that the people who are saying it's a positive thing have already been affected by it. Like
Yes.
they're clearly already serving it.
Right.
It's
We're
kind of like,
getting.
as a bit of a, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say we're getting advice from people who have had, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the people who have already had their
Exactly.
their bodies
Right.
snatched or whatever, telling
Yeah,
us, "Oh, these aliens
they've
are
already been
great."
snatched. They're the best. You should love them too.
Right.
Kind of a complete aside, but like the wild world of parasites. Nature's scary, and I know you're big on the idea of parasites and that dogs
Yes.
themselves are a form of a brood parasite, which of course I agree. And then I always liken them to, I think that they're like the Russian nesting dolls because they are parasites, but they also house parasites. And those parasites probably have parasites. I mean, it's like
Mm-hmm.
parasites and parasites and parasites. Basically, like if we were sane as a species, I don't want to say we, because clearly, like you and I are beyond this, but if and others, but if as a species overall, like we shouldn't want anything to do with these creatures. I know you're fascinated by the concept of parasites. You ever heard of a horsehair parasite?
I don't think so.
Uh, there's good nightmare fuel. So
Really?
praying mantis, it's a pretty distinctive insect that that's sort of popular. They got sort of this long body and these hook-like arms in the front that uh, they use to, like kind of snatch their prey
Yeah,
and then they
praying
eat it
mantises are
live and
pretty
all that.
cool.
They're rather interesting. Their head can turn 360 degrees, I think, and I might be confusing that with something else, but they for sure the females they're famous because the females after mating, the female will consume the male on the spot.
Right.
Like they're done with the deed, and then post-coital, she grabs
Right.
the male and eats him. So anyway, there's a parasite called a horsehair parasite, which can infect a praying mantis. They lay their eggs in water. The praying mantis then, drinking water or whatever, will get these eggs in its body. Parasite grows along the nervous system of the praying mantis, and it grows so large it essentially like consumes, kind of like you're talking about the beetles. It'll consume the innards of much of the praying mantis, especially its nervous system, and kind of like attach itself
Ooh.
to its to like its rudimentary functions. So when it's mating time, or when it's egg laying time for the parasite, because the parasite's eggs need to be in the water, it tells the praying mantis time to go take a swim. and it forces the mantis to go into water and drown itself. And then when it dies, the parasite releases into the water, lays its eggs, and the circle of life continues.
Ew.
You ever do like a Lion King, the circle of life, right? They're extremely nasty. And you can probably find if you look up horsehair
I
parasite
am
praying
looking at it
mantis, you'll
now.
find videos. Are you? Are you showing
I'm
the
on
viewers? Because you can.
Wikipedia right now.
'Cause Yeah, if you find a video, because what people have found out you can do is you take a praying mantis and stick it in water, and it'll force it, like it'll force the parasite to erupt. And
Ooh,
it's
God.
like, it's insane. Well, it's insane how large they are, like how much they consume and fill up the inside of that. It's like just basically a husk. They're like driving it around like a suit.
That is
Um,
terrifying.
Nature's scary. So the
Nature
point,
is
I guess,
scary.
it was a bit of a segue. Yeah, nature's not no Disney movie. See, again, back to that point.
Exactly.
I mean, back to
Exactly.
the whole generation of people thinking that, you're going to go out in the woods and sing some notes and like, Bambi will come and sit at your feet while, a bunny crawls up on your shoulder and a bird lands on your palm and, you're whistling and all the birds and they're all like singing back. This is, I know it sounds absurd when you think about it, but this is ingrained into people's psyche that like this is like, oh, like being in harmony with nature and being, like I can communicate with animals. And it's like anything but that. Nature is scary. Nature is fierce. I've known people like that like they got to feed all the animals. They got to feed all the wild animals and like show. And then again, virtue signal. Then they got to show, look. And he's like, he's going to eat out of my hand. He's going to come right up to my door to get food. And because I'm so wonderful with nature. You see, look at me. I'm a good person. Look what I can do. And you're gonna have uh, yeah. I knew a person, kind of a, I don't think they were a dog nutter, but they were just a nutter, like an overall nutter. She was, she was just an overall nutter. Like she was an everything nutter. She used to want to feed the rabbits. Now, I don't know about like where you live, but there's like a lot of rabbits around here. Because
Yeah.
anywhere, if you're not in an urban setting, if you're like suburbs, everywhere is rabbit food. Rabbits eat grass and weeds. That's
Right.
what they eat. So, plenty of rabbits to be found. Uh, she's like, "Oh, the poor rabbits, they got nothing to eat." And I'm kind of like, it's like I'm trying to explain, but you know that like you're talking, like I can hear the echo
Right.
as I speak, and it bounces back from their head. Like I'm like, well, they eat grass. There's food everywhere. She's like, no, they're starving. I got to make them a plate. And it like
What?
she would take she would take a plate and like chop up like apples and carrots and like have this like little like smorgasbord of like fresh vegetables and fruits to feed the rabbits, and then she put it outside. And of course, the rabbits would eat it because like you give them like an apple, that's like crack. It's like so
Right.
much
Because it's
so
rare
much
in
sugar and
nature for
whatever.
them to get anything like that amount of
Exactly.
sugar and stuff.
The point is of course, they'll eat it, but the point is that's not what they eat. They normally eat grass and weeds. In fact, the rabbits in particular need that for their digestive system. They need to constantly be eating the grass and weeds, or else they'll have tummy problems. Let's just say.
Yes.
Yeah. She was just kind of like an overall nutter, and she thought she had to feed the rabbits or they would starve to death. And I'm like, where does this kind of? I mean,
That is a
I mean,
wild
where does this come
disconnect
from?
from reality.
Yeah, but this is the world we're living in. Like this, you can look around you, and how can this be? Besides that, um, oh, and this is what I was talking about, kind of the history. I like looking at the history of things. How did it come to be? There has been this concerted deconstruction of objective reality over the past, say, 20 years or so, especially in the education system. You see the rise of this sort of like feelings over facts ideologies, and the ideas that, well, reality can be anything you want it to be. Um, there's that. I think that has a link to where we're at right now. I haven't quite fully formed this thought out, but I was thinking about it the other day that part of the problem of where we're at right now, and like for example with these ADA laws, how they keep getting more and more ridiculous, and they're going to add all these things like, yeah, dogs can like smell your sweat and tell you, and it's like all nonsense, but they're actually putting that into the regulations now. All this comes from the fact that this is even a thing, and that nobody, more importantly, nobody questions it. I think comes from this sort of like 20-year gap that, like I said, I lived through, I saw the changes happen. If you're about 20 years old, this is the only world you've known. But I knew a different world at one point
Right.
where actually we had a more objective reality and people would question stuff like this. But now that's well, no, you can't do that. You can't offend. No, you can't ask them if that's a service dog. It's a service dog if they say it's a service dog. I mean,
Right.
just stop and think about what they're saying. It's like there's no objective reality to it. It's just a service dog because they say it is.
Yeah, you're not allowed
And you can't
to.
question it.
No. Any type of narrative like this, you're not allowed to question. And even though you are allowed to ask two questions, even with the ADA's uh, regulations, like you're allowed to ask, is this dog, like, do you have a disability or something, like, does this dog help you with a disability? And what is this dog trained to do? But in my
Right. Yeah, they ask you.
experience, they don't even ask that. They won't even ask the
Right.
questions they're allowed to ask. Like I told you about the grocery store situation I had a few weeks ago, where this pregnant woman and her husband or partner carried the dog physically into the store. I guess because they didn't
Right.
want it to burn its paws on the on the parking
You
lot.
said there's, and you said there's a homeless man right there.
Right
That
past a homeless
the dog
guy
has been.
laying on the street, or not on the street, but like on the outside the
Yeah.
grocery store. Uh,
Yeah. But,
then
but don't
set
let
it.
the doggy get his little paws heated up on the
No, it would
concrete.
hurt its paws, and they're clearly disabled, so they carry it into the store. And then it proceeds to start licking food, and licking the cart,
Right.
and licking the floor, and barking at people. And um, I went to two separate managers and asked them to address this clearly not real. I don't think any of them are real, frankly. But, this one was egregiously not a real service dog. Like, it's licking your food. Like, and they wouldn't
Right.
even approach. Like, the first woman, the female manager, looked over. She actually looked concerned for about half a second when I said it was licking food. But as
That
soon
might
as
be a
she,
record.
that was a record, yeah. But as soon as she saw it had this fake looking service dog vest on. Not even a vest, like just a little harness that had a patch, like a Velcro patch that said service dog. As soon as she saw that, she said, "Oh no, it's a service dog. I can't do anything." And I was like, "Yeah,
Right.
but it's not really a service dog. You can just get that vest on like Amazon. It's licking food that you're selling to humans. This is a health code problem." And she just was like trying to get rid of me essentially. It was like, "Oh yeah, I'll keep an eye on it. I'll keep an eye on it and watch
You're,
out."
you've become the problem at this point.
Exactly. Now I'm the problem because I'm forcing her to confront reality.
Never a popular position. Trust me.
Right.
Yeah, never popular position to be in.
Have you ever watched Star Trek?
Of course.
Okay. Do you remember an episode called The Trouble with Tribbles?
Oh yeah.
That kind
That's
of
like
reminds
rudimentary
me.
Star Trek. Yeah.
It
Well,
kind of
it's
reminds
funny
me a little
because
bit
they
about.
had. Okay, can I geek out a little bit here?
Yes,
So yeah,
please.
the Tribbles, if you recall, had they emitted a certain tone that was found to be relaxing upon the human nervous system. So they actually provided it was almost like a drug-like effect to the people that were interacting with them. And so everybody, and of course, the trouble with the Tribbles was that when they eat, they multiply, kind of like gremlins. They turn into a whole bunch of things. So everybody's like keeping them. Oh, they're so cute. But then like before they know it, here then somebody would see it and say, "Oh, what's that? Oh, it's a tribble. Here, it just made babies. You want one?" And they spread it around. And the point is that the whole crew has these tribbles, and everybody's feeding them, and they're multiplying like mad. And all just basically just it's interesting because they didn't really have a downside besides they consumed resources, and maybe you could say they become a nuisance when there were so many of them. But they didn't have they didn't eat people, and they didn't start murdering people like dogs would do.
Right.
But one other interesting thing about that episode was, do you recall the little plot twist at the end when the Tribbles? It turned out they actually had an advantage, like an actual real, like they solved a problem in the episode,
I
like the
don't
B plot.
recall exactly.
So the plot. See, I know I'm totally geeking out. Yeah, I've watched Star Trek. All right, look, the 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 kind of the overall premise is that they're on this space station, and there was some diplomatic thing going on because there's a special of wheat that they need to send to this planet that was having trouble with its food supply, so they need this like special resilient wheat called quadrotriticale. Oh God, now
Okay, you
people are
are
really gonna
really
think I'm
looking it up.
okay. Anyway, they got this special wheat that's gonna save lives. I'm trying to simplify it all. And in the end of the episode, or the end of the episode, the tribbles had gotten into the wheat, and they ate all the wheat, and they're like, oh no, like all our precious wheat. You're in big trouble, Captain Kirk. The tribbles ate all the wheat. But wait, these tribbles are dead. They're all dead. What happened? And they analyzed the wheat and said there was a poison in the wheat. So it turns out that the Klingons had planted a spy, an operative, among the Federation crew there, and he poisoned the wheat because they were going to poison like the colony. So the tribbles turned out they inadvertently, because they eat everything, they inadvertently discovered that the wheat was poisoned. It was no good, first off. And then second off, the tribbles could react negatively to Klingons. So like with people, they would pet the tribble and they would coo and ooh and all that stuff. And then whenever you put a tribble near a Klingon, it would freak out. Basically like start barking, right? So there's another interesting parallel. Yeah, yeah, you could say almost there's like a lot of dog nuttery undertones in there because yeah, the tribbles could detect if you were a good person or not.
Right.
Yeah, they ate a bunch, they reproduced like mad, they took up all sorts of space, and but we felt good petting them, and they could tell when bad guys were
And
around.
they kind of
Yeah,
saved the day in the end and
they
sacrificed
saved the day in
themselves
the
in the
end.
process.
They were noble like that because they were like better than people, really,
Right.
if you think about it. And yeah, so Dale Tribbles. Yes. All right, I'm gonna stop. Whoa, that had to at least be entertaining.
That was
But
really good. I like that. I've heard about that episode. I haven't actually watched that one, but I've read the
mm,
plot, and I bring it up just because sometimes it reminds me of our situation with dogs. Like they kind of take over, like you mentioned, the oxytocin pathway.
yeah.
Um, whereas the tribbles like made this like soothing cooing noise, so they tolerated their massive like overpopulation on the ship or whatever. I don't know. It's not the perfect parallel, but I thought it was kind of funny.
It's no, it's actually, it's funny that I've never really even thought about that until you just brought it up, but that's a fantastic parallel on a whole bunch of points. And again, really fascinating that yeah, in the end, despite them being a nuisance, they save the day
Right.
because, they can tell who's good and who's bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's where we're at. Yeah, yeah. So the insanity goes, I mean, and that was Star Trek was in the 1960s. The original Star Trek was in the 1960s. So that type of thinking goes way back. But at least it was science fiction.
Right.
At least we grew up and, hey, I kind of understood that it was a fantasy, but
The things have declined from there.
no. Have you ever thought about the idea of the simulacrum that the idea that when you have a simulation of a thing, and then a simulation becomes a simulation, eventually you become so far away from the original source, like you don't even know what it is. I think was it you I said this to, like about how I'm sure there's somebody somewhere who's never eaten an actual strawberry in their life, but they've surely eaten a strawberry flavored product.
Oh yeah, I remember you
So
mentioning that sometime.
yeah, this philosophy that like basically like yeah, you may not even know what a strawberry is, but like you could say, well, I know what a strawberry flavored thing is. So you think you know what a strawberry is, but you've never really experienced a strawberry. The further and further we get, the invention of television. I mean, uh, well, I mean, it's about a century now. Television actually goes back before people even thought it was, but as far as like mainstream programming went,
Mm-hmm.
it's really not that long as far as human history goes. But every generation of television, it's like a fantasy, it's like a simulation of reality, and then each successive generation is built off the previous, and it's like a fantasy based on a fantasy. But now at this point, we're completely disconnected from reality. Like there's all those tropes. You ever look at things like they have a whole website about like TV tropes and things that you commonly see in television shows and movies, the way characters behave, the way that people act. Like everybody knows that like if you bonk somebody on the back of the head, they instantly fall unconscious, right? And
Right.
that and they'll wake up with, and they'll be completely fine when they wake up. It
Right.
doesn't cause any kind of actual like, permanent damage or anything, but just one bonk on the head, and as long as it hits them from behind and they don't see you coming, that'll knock them out. Sure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm talking about. It's called TV tropes, but it's like disconnected from reality, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So you have, I think, in my estimation, not to blame, I'm not trying to single out one generation, but I really think that the millennial generation was probably the first one to have this like completely just out there reality get presented to them in their fantasy, in their TV, in their movies and cartoons. Yeah, this is really cartoon reality.
Yes, totally. And I know we've talked about this before, not on a recorded call, but and it kind of ties into something we talked about earlier with being given uh, really bad advice on how to counteract a dog attack. But do you remember when we were talking about like women having this concept that they could just fight off a grown man if they learned jujitsu or something? You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
uh, kind of like I've heard people say, "Oh, well, if a dog is rushing up to you, just yell really loud in your like loudest, meanest voice, and it'll stop right in its tracks." And it's like,
Right.
maybe that will work if you're a large man with a really booming, deep voice. But I
Right.
don't think that even my own kids, like, you know what I mean? My voice is much less scary than like a man's, even when I'm trying to
Right.
sound serious. Like, I think even my most serious sounding, deep, like, no, stop, like, voice would not have that effect on a dog. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
I do.
just like,
I've employed that. I've employed that tactic, by the way, but I'm a large man with a deep voice,
right.
and I've gotten it to work. It's not 100% effective. I've only gotten it to work a couple times out of all the times I've had to try it. And the fact that I'm saying all the times I've had to try it, I mean, I don't even go outside that much anymore. But there's just way too many dogs. Right? You have way too
Yes.
many interactions with, and I've been attacked on like hiking trails a lot, and I've gotten I've gotten a couple to stop with that tactic, but doesn't work all the time. And I can't imagine, yeah, if a child starts screaming, that's gonna make their prey drive kick in even more. Oh, look, it's panicking. It's I'm winning.
Yeah,
Full
exactly.
steam ahead.
A high pitched screaming
Yeah.
sound is just going to sound even more like prey.
And that's again the bad advice. And they give you contradictory advice: stand still, be a tree, but also scream at it. Like, well,
Right.
which is it?
Yeah,
They don't
exactly.
know. They don't have an answer.
There
That's
isn't an
why. Yeah, they don't
answer.
have an answer.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no good answer. It's
The
just
answer is let's not have.
obfuscation.
Yeah, the answer is let's not have the like. Nobody wants to actually look at the real answer. The answer is don't have them around.
Right.
It's like somebody trying to mitigate, you know, random thing, like just somebody trying to mitigate drug abuse. Like, well, like take this drug and don't take this drug and only do it at this hour. Like, well, I mean, like, don't take any harmful thing. Like, don't put any harmful thing in your body. That's the answer.
Right.
But that may be too difficult of an answer. They got to
Right.
come up. So, like, the answer is let's not have these dogs around. It's too difficult though for people to hear. So,
Exactly. They don't want
well,
to hear the
stand
truth.
still.
Yeah. I've run into this a lot, and I think it's especially harmful, like you said, to women or children. In this particular example, like with women, being told or being shown movies, it's like the cartoon reality. It's like the badass feminine heroine, and she's taking on
Right.
a whole group of 20 men with just like her
Right.
cool
Highly
karate
trained.
moves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, like highly trained muscular men. Like they're all like like fight. They know how to fight. She can take them down with
she can take
these
him down
some
because
flippy
she's,
kicks,
yeah,
some
she's,
flippy kicks, and some stretchy splits moves, and
yeah, jumps off the wall and wraps her legs around his
usually,
head and falls
yes,
into
I
the
was just about to
ground.
say usually something involving wrapping the legs around their head.
I'm afraid that what would actually happen, and see, I used to train. I was in Taekwondo when I was really little, pretty like middle
Mm.
school and around that time, and then I did kickboxing and I tried for a brief time to learn grappling. And anytime I had to grapple, there weren't very many women in most of my
Yeah.
grappling classes. So I get paired with like the smallest guy, and he would always be mad because he's not getting a good training session in
Right.
with me. And I was
Right.
really fit. I'm strong for my size. Like most of my lifts are in the advanced to elite category. Like I've been training for a long time. So for a woman of my size, I'm relatively strong. But
Right.
even
Tes-
compared to
Testosterone is a hell of a drug.
yeah, even compared to a man who is smaller than me, like weighs less than me, I was literally completely handicapped. I mean, if he even used 50% of his strength, it was like, it's women, I don't think comprehend, and there is a point to this with dogs, so I'll get to it. But
I might even know where you're going. I'll pat myself on the back if I get it right. Go ahead.
okay, so unless you've had real world experiences like that, like I don't think most women truly understand if they've never had a man like actually like lay hands on her or like wrestle or whatever, like grapple or fight, like in a controlled environment even. I don't think, because I didn't until it happened, I don't think women understand the actual sheer difference in strength between a man and a woman. I mean, it was like incomparable to other grappling matches I had with women. It was like just the grip force was unimaginable. And they're not even using their full strength. Like there's just no comparison between the strength of a man and a woman. So like an untrained man off the street could easily overpower me, and I train constantly. You know what I mean? At my fittest, best shape, strongest lifts, I'm not going to be able to fight off a man likely, even off just a random guy off the street. And in that line of thinking, like I do not believe that most people, and I'm speaking about women particularly, understand the sheer strength of a dog either until it's too late. Like the bite
Right.
force, the speed, the ferocity. You know what I mean? I just think that, like you
And
said, we've been so removed from for objective reality that people are wholly unprepared when reality finally confronts them. So that's why you see like in dog attack videos or things like that, like the people are just have no concept of what to do in that situation, how to handle it. Like they're yelling at the dog like that's going to do anything, or spraying water on it. Like you're talking about a predatory beast that is pure solid muscle. Like, you know what I mean? Like that thing, it can
oh,
is so strong, it will crush your bones. Do you understand that the amount of force that takes?
right.
You know what I mean? Like I don't
Oh,
think that I think we've been done a great disservice by being lied to and deceived through media, and like you were talking about television and movies, with these images that our brain can't know that the images on TV aren't real. Our brain processes it like it's real information. So when a woman
right.
sees, you know, a woman on TV fighting a group of men, or fighting off a man, or grappling a man and winning, or whatever, fighting off an animal, like she's gonna think that that's possible.
Yeah, no problem. Matter of fact, yeah, it's no problem. I
Right,
would simply do this. You'll hear that in the rhetoric. Yeah, I would just do this.
right.
It'd be easy. And which is makes it what compounds this matter is, and I'm sorry to have to single out women specifically here, but in the dog sphere, in the doggosphere, the one of the big problems is the large dangerous animals with with female owners.
Yes, like a lot of these cases we were just talking about today is, oh, the grandma dropped the boy off with a
Yeah.
female friend who had two
Yeah.
mastiff Great Danes. She can't
Yep.
handle those dogs physically in any scenario.
Yeah. They
She,
think they can baby talk it into submission.
right,
Uh,
no.
I've watched. You talked about videos. You see videos of. I've watched a lot of dog attack videos. You see. There's no shortage of them. I've seen dog attack videos happen at dog shows, like where there's a whole bunch of dogs and alleged experts, people who should know how to handle dogs, and they don't know what to do. They can't stop it. They can't break it up. Yeah, people who really have no idea what especially the size of dogs that we have now. And if I could, if we could do this in stages, if we could try to bring rationality to this matter in stages, I think the first stage would have to be we'd have to limit size.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously, I'd want them all gone.
Right.
But if that's too big of a hurdle, if that's too much reality for people, let's start with we're going to have to assign a weight limit and say like, okay, no dogs over this size. Start there.
Right.
Because once you get a dog that, you know, 60, 70, 80, 90 pounds, it's like the size of a, that's bigger than a child. That's like more mass than a child. And it has sharp teeth. Uh, and it has, certain instincts and prey drives and all that stuff. You start having stuff like that. That's a deadly creature, at the very least to children, but also potentially to
To
adults.
me, I mean,
And
I'm like 5'6", 135, 145 ish. I kind of fluctuate depending on my training or diet or whatever at the time. That dog would
carbs.
overpower me. Yeah, my carb cycling. um, Easily. And I'm, fairly low body fat. Like, so there's a lot of muscle. Like I said, I'm not trying to like toot my horn. I'm just trying to give like context.
All right,
Like even
we got to
a
give the viewers. Yeah,
fit.
they got
Well, I'm
to.
just trying to say, like,
Yeah.
even a fit, I'm still young, I'm pretty fit, like, I try to take care of myself, like, I train, I work out. I'm not going to be able to defend myself against one Great Dane Mastiff very easily at all.
Right.
If at all, my best case scenario, like I said, is like I get on its back and just hang on for dear life until help arrives.
I just did a quick because I know that they're huge dogs. Uh, the giant Mastiff. Let's see. We're looking for Dane Mastiffs. Great Dane Mastiff mix typically weighs around 115 to 190 pounds.
Yeah,
It has a height ranging between 27 and 33 inches fully grown. So 33 inches, that's like nearly 3 feet high.
just on its four legs. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. When it rears up on its hind legs, of course, that's going to be able to get at all your vital areas. But even at 3 feet high, your thighs, your groin, your
right.
your midsection, your hands. I mean, but just the sheer weight of that, typically 115 to 190 pounds. Let's cut that in the middle and say about 150 pounds. So a Great Dane Mastiff on average is going to be like your size, your body mass,
Right.
but made for murder.
Made for
Like
killing,
it's got teeth
yes.
and yeah, made for killing.
It's on four legs, it's
Yeah,
got
this
better
is this
leverage,
is
it's faster than I am, like it's in every way like physically superior. You know what I mean?
this is insane. This is a clear sign of like if you want any sign is humanity collectively losing in their minds? Like if you want any sign of that, the fact that these things exist and that people advocate for them and like, oh yeah, they're gentle, loving household pets, and they'll leave them around their children who they're gonna outmass and like 3 feet. That's like their sharp teeth are at the child's face.
Yeah.
And they wonder why tragedies happen. Yeah,
Right. It's like
you
every
can't have the
time, oh, this could have never been foreseen. Like, what are you talking about? Never foreseen. It
right.
happens all the time.
You gotta look back a little further than one step back. You gotta yeah, it could have been foreseen. Just don't have a dog that can kill you. Don't have a dog that can kill people. Like don't keep a thing as a pet. I'm sorry to keep repeating, but I'm trying to refine the statement.
Right.
Don't keep something as a pet that can kill human beings. There,
Right.
we've averted disaster,
Right, that's
right?
all it would take, and yet it seems like it's going in the opposite direction because I don't know if you've noticed, but even worse, more dangerous breeds are becoming more popular, like cane corsos. What are
Yes.
those ones? I mean, these were dogs that were literal war dogs in like Roman
Right.
times.
Right. But I'm sure
Doggo,
they're great with kids too.
Argentino. But yeah, they're portrayed. I've literally heard this term, gentle giants.
Right.
Like, no, they're not. Like, but we have to, it's
Oh yeah.
very
Look.
infuriating to have to sit back and watch this happen over and over and over, and still seems like people just are not getting the message here.
Looking. I just typed in what you said. Gentle giant dogs. Here we go. 11 gentle giants. 11 dog breeds that are gentle giants. The Great Dane, Bernese Mountain Dog, the Bull Mastiff, Newfoundland, the American Pit Bull Terrier. Right. Because, great with kids. The Greyhound, English Mastiff, St. Bernard,
See, you can't
uh,
convince me that
Cape
this isn't
Tyree.
an agenda with articles like
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I know. See, this is viewers. In case anybody's listening to this, I say viewers. Wouldn't that be listeners?
that.
Well, you're
Well, I
showing
have
them
some
something too.
video, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When Sheepy and I talk, we have I don't know if there's like some cosmic wavelength or something, but we 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 uh we have a lot of shared thoughts going on here. So right. I was just thinking that too about the agenda. And did we cover that in a previous show, or did we tease that
I
we were
think
going
we're
to cover
teasing
it and
it.
get into
It's
some of
still a
the?
teaser. We need to do a topic on the
That's a deep dive.
process church. I'll actually have to prepare for that. I want to make a good
Uh,
presentation when we cover that.
But yeah, no doubt. That's not just accidental or human foolishness or forgetfulness to say, "Oh, gee, remember how we put this law in place, this breed specific ban that was put in place after that child got killed in our neighborhood? Remember that? Oh, we just forgot about it. We said we can lift it. Oh, that was like 20 years ago. That was way back then. Let's live in the now." It would be doggy racism
Exactly.
to continue such a thing.
Well, even like
So yeah, there's a concerted effort.
right,
Uh,
even in this article I was reading earlier about millennials, 33% of millennials are buying homes for their dog. Towards the bottom, the article says, uh, lovable as your mutt is, it could be considered high risk based solely on its breed. I recommend being open and honest with your insurance company. Blah blah blah. A lot of times it won't deny you coverage because of the dog you own. They might just charge a little extra for what they see as an increased risk. And then in parentheses, i.e., your quote dangerous dog. So see how
right.
it's
Not
subtle.
really.
It's subtle, but they're like mocking or poo pooing the idea that any dog, based on
Right.
its size, could be dangerous.
Right. Because it's not dangerous. You know he wouldn't hurt
No.
anybody.
But the
You know
big
he would
bad
never hurt
insurance companies,
it. Right.
and as much as a problem, I have a lot to say about insurance, but they care about the bottom line and numbers. So you
Right.
can guarantee that if they're not fully on board with the dog nutter culture and have higher rates for covering certain dog breeds, it's because they have raw data on that. If they could get away with like promoting pit bulls, they would be doing it too. You know what I'm saying? Like they want money. That their business is making money. They don't want to lose money because of your dangerous dog, so they're going to charge you more because they have data showing that the dog is dangerous. But here in these articles, they poo poo that, like, oh, you're big, gentle giant, the big, lovable mutt. The insurance company
Right.
might consider it, quote, dangerous, but you know what I mean? Like, they always mock and poo poo the idea, even the idea that some dogs are dangerous.
You know who else likes money is grocery stores. That's one of the reasons why, to get back, I won't dwell here too long, but on the grocery store subject, and the fake service dogs, that's why they don't really take a hard position on it.
Exactly.
It's not just that they're intimidated by ADA laws, because quite frankly, somebody who's committing service dog fraud is not going to sue anybody and get away with it.
Right.
Or at least I hope not. You never know how
Well,
insane things get.
yeah.
Well, the fake service dog, and they wouldn't let my fake service dog in, but I'm going to sue them anyway. Yeah, that
You win a
sounds like a
million
reasonable case.
dollars.
You're awarded. You want a million? Eh, I wouldn't be surprised at this point. But yeah, they like money too, so they're not going to rock the boat too much. Can we talk about this is a close subject to me, and it's come up a few times recently in various things. But can we talk about homelessness since we're talking about people buying
Yes,
houses
that's what I wanted to
for
segue into that from this. Again, with the
there we go
with the
again, the
connection. Yeah.
cosmic bond. There
But
we
that was one
go.
thing I wanted to segue because, yeah, go ahead.
Um, well, gee, where to start? I mean, to me, it's there's a, and I wish I had hard data right now upon what the current estimates are. But there's like on the ground footage, people that at great risk, they'll take a cell phone and go film the streets, like in there's certain neighborhoods in Los Angeles, for example, that have completely turned into like basically homeless
I'm
encampments.
thinking like Skid
And
Row type stuff.
right, but there's like a new place. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to look up the data in the future. But it's I don't know what the numbers are, but homelessness has always been. It is a huge problem. It's a rising problem, and especially now, if we're going to talk about children and how there's orphan children who are homeless. There's if you think about the system that they get into with the houses, what do they call it? With the
Like foster care.
foster home, yes, foster care system, and then they get bounced around that horrible situation until they're too old for it, and then they just end up on the streets. So we have a serious human problem of not enough care being directed towards the homeless, and I'd also like to tack into this topic the hungry,
Hmm.
because even people with homes, they don't always have food to eat. In the nation where what 70% of the people are overweight,
Yeah.
there's still people, there's still children that are starving. Yet, where we're going with all this, as of course any anti-dog person would of course know we're going, is that of course there are people going out of their ways to purchase the right home for their dog, and it has the correct backyard, and they got to have a bed and their own bedroom. I've known people that have their own rooms for dogs,
Yes, same.
like in their house. They got like a four-bedroom house, and then this is the dog's bedroom, and they're being fed the best of foods, fresh, they're getting the fresh meats, and we know the tales from the doghouse stories where like uh, uh, the dogs are getting all sorts of fresh food purchased for them, and then the same person will spend like the bare minimum amount on store brand macaroni and cheese
Yeah, kids getting
and cereal
bologna,
for the kids.
dogs getting
Kids get
steak.
bologna, right. Um, I found out recently that you're aware of food pantries, people who
Hmm.
are in need if they're low on resources. They're usually community driven, so it'll often be like a church will often do it, or sometimes villages, or certain townships will have them. But yeah, so there's places that people can go to varying degrees of success. Usually, it's not a lot of stuff like you really want to eat, or it's maybe not stuff that's necessarily going to be good for you. You're not getting fresh food. It's a lot of canned stuff with a lot of preservatives and box things, whatever. But I guess you could argue to keep you alive. But I found out recently there's also such a thing as pet pantries.
I just heard about this recently too.
Oh yes, yeah, pet pantries exist, and they might even be connected to like human food pantries, but they are a thing, and you can probably Google it right now. Just look up like pet food pantries. You'll see all signs. I found results like how you can start your own pet food pantry, and what would it involve. So there's people volunteering, going out of their way. So here's human labor. There's resources involved. There's obviously some sort of facility has to be used. Let's just say there's manpower and infrastructure involved to making sure that your dog doesn't go hungry. That's a
Yeah,
thing.
that's what we need.
All at the same
That's
time, yeah. While at the same time, there's human children starving, and people sleeping on the street, sleeping in their own urine, and whatnot. So I don't know. That was more of kind of a rant on the subject. I don't know. Is there anything specific you wanted to talk about regarding homelessness or, uh, as I'd say, hunger as being social problems? But now that there's such a concerted effort to make sure that dogs don't go hungry or have not be homeless, which
yeah.
they don't need homes.
Well, right. Um, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm not an expert. This is something I'd like to learn more about because I think on one of our last calls I told you I had just found out that a lot of homelessness is caused by children aging out of the foster care system, which I did not know and was extremely heartbreaking to me. And I think it just demonstrates again that our society is valuing dogs over children and over humans. And yeah, what I wanted to say regarding like the home buying, I think we're pretty much all aware that there is a serious issue with housing in this country. It's
Yes.
becoming increasingly unaffordable I know a lot of people in my generation um, who are despairing because they don't see a path to them ever owning their own home. It's no longer a given.
Right.
Like with the boomers, it was kind of, a lot of it comes up in talks about like the boomers being out of touch with the financial and economic realities of millennials. They're like, oh, you can't afford a house, it's because you're eating avocado toast and getting coffee. And if you just pulled yourself up by your
Right.
bootstraps, you could buy a house like I did back for $30,000 and a pint of raspberries. And you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
um,
With a high school education and getting a job on, the closest, like whatever was in walking distance,
yeah, and it was
it
a
is.
nice house in a
Yeah.
suburban neighborhood, and my wife stayed home, raised all the kids on a single income. When you can't do that, you need to just Dave Ramsey your way into financial literacy. you know.
I,
Um,
I think if I could go back in time a little on that, uh, the generational thing, that was something unique to the boomers. You have to understand that like they had more wealth than anyone before and
mhm.
since. So even like my generation X, I didn't. Now I know there are some more successful generation X and what, but like I didn't get a lot of those opportunities either. Like we were kind of like boomers. I'm sorry, millennial lights in that
Right.
regard. Like we we didn't have the same opportunities. And even the generations before, like multi-generational homes were a thing. Like when boomers were children, they had like their grandparents and parents and all kind of different family members and everything sharing a home with them. That the boomers lived a very unique slice of American history
Right.
where they had that opportunity for upward mobility. And as you say, it's been recognized that they're a bit out of touch because things were, quite frankly, they were playing the game on easy mode. Just that little slice of time. But I,
Exactly.
I do want to point out that it wasn't before that either. Like it was just that generation. People before it didn't have it easier, and the people since haven't had it easier. It's just that one generation had a hard time
Right.
or an easy time. Sorry.
Yes. I think
Please,
that it
please
just comes
continue.
in conversations where they're out of touch for that reason. And I actually prefer, I'm going to start making a habit of this, but they were often referred to as the me generation, so instead of
Yeah.
boomers. So I think that's an accurate, because, yeah, they had a very unique experience as far as like living through kind of like a great economic time. Anyways,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
we're
No, you're right.
facing uh, like Xers, millennials, and younger generations are definitely facing a whole slew of new conditions, making it much more difficult to ever own a home. So it very much disturbs me to see those that can afford to own their own home buying
Mm.
up these homes so that dogs can live a good life in their estimation. Like this quote from the article where it was like, "Well, it would be inhumane for a dog to live in an apartment." Well, is it inhumane for children to be living in abusive foster homes? Isn't that
Right.
inhumane? Is it inhumane for them to have no social safety net whatsoever once they're aging out of foster care and literally end up on the street, like worse than a dog? Is that humane? Is, you know what I mean? Is that the society we're trying to build here? That dinkwads, because they, don't have children or any responsibilities like that financially, can afford homes and then fill the homes with dogs. You know what I mean? And then carry the dog into the local grocery store, like stepping
In a baby
over
stroller.
bodies on the ground, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To buy organic food for their dog or whatever from, like, or
Right.
to,
Right.
to
Right.
buy some fresh steaks to feed their mutt while people are starving and suffering from, uh, you know, there's a whole slew of things we could go into. Maybe we should make an entire dedicated segment on this, but food
It's a huge one.
deserts, like you said, even the food pantries, people just throw out old cans, cleaning out their pantry. They get kind of bottom
Yeah.
of the
It's
barrel
like the
options.
pumpkin pie mix from last Thanksgiving. That's like the
Yes,
kind of thing. Oh, I bet a hungry person would like this. It's
right.
like, yeah.
Or they donate,
Yeah.
their old clothes that already have holes and stains, and they're like, feel like they're doing a good thing by, well, the homeless will at least appreciate this. Like, they don't deserve any dignity. You know what I mean? They don't
Right.
deserve to have nice clothes. They don't deserve to have nice food. They're lucky they're getting any
Right.
of our scraps. Meanwhile, the dog is getting
Yeah.
a freshly prepared meal with raw food and supplements, and it's getting its steady diet of Prozac or whatever. That's been something that's been bothering me a lot lately and been on my mind is like, we've talked about this a little bit before, but like the amount of resources being funneled to dogs, like our pharmaceutical resources. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I remember
Sure.
when I actually got really, really sick, and I usually am not the. I avoid going to the doctor as much as possible. Um, I avoid using any type of pharmaceuticals unless it's like absolutely necessary. I don't like going to the hospital. Like, I'm not the kind of person that's like, I get a sniffle and head to the doctor. It really has to be bad for me to actually seek medical treatment. Thanks, insurance. No, but uh, so I actually did get extremely sick a year or so ago now, to the point where I went to the hospital. Like, I went to the ER. I thought I was actually like in very real danger. Like, I
Mm.
was not in good shape,
Uh-oh.
which is unusual for me. So, um, and I was extremely dehydrated because I couldn't even keep like water down, no fluids, no nothing. Like, I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, like I could barely walk, like I was like crawling across the floor, like, please take me to the hospital. Like, it was bad. And
Wow.
I got there and they were like, well, uh, yeah, you're sick. um, we're
Mm.
having a
Thank
short.
you. Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for
I
that.
know. We're having a
Mm.
shortage of um, saline
Oh.
and a shortage
Mm-hmm.
of like medications. Like, I really wanted like something for nausea, like some kind of anti-nausea medication, and like an IV bag because I thought like I'm just in really bad shape here, and I didn't get an IV bag. They gave me like they put a thing in my arm and basically gave me like a syringe worth of like saline or something, and it was kind of like, that's the best we can do for you. So I'm like, you know, is the vet hospital got like, you know, giving saline to dogs? Like, are the, you know what I mean? I don't. This isn't coming
Well,
through very well. I feel I could organize these thoughts better, but is it not kind of messed up that we have supply chain issues, like medication shortages? People can't afford essential medications that can keep them from actually dying. You know, I'm thinking about diabetics and insulin and stuff. I know that's a struggle. But I guarantee you, there's dogs on insulin and dogs on getting, you know,
you betcha.
surgeries and getting
Oh,
IVs.
you've you've no doubt heard of dogs getting $10,000 surgeries.
Yes.
I knew somebody that did that. I'm like, are you out of your mind? It was a pit bull, no less. They
Ugh.
wanted to save the thing's life. Pit bull, $10,000 surgery, you know. So yeah, well, I mean, there's a saline shortage, but good thing because Sir barks a lot. You know, he needed to have a surgery, and we got to make sure that he stays in tip-top shape. It's a misappropriation of resources. It's one of
Yes.
I call it the five pillars of dog destruction. Have I ever told you my theory on that? The
No,
five
but that
pillars of
sounds
dog
very
destruction.
interesting.
In short, okay, it's it's kind of it's just a launching point for discussion, but it's the five key areas that I feel that dogs are harming us as a species and a society. And this would be number one is in safety, number two is in health and hygiene, number three is in let's say resources and resource distribution. Then you have the environmental and the social. These are yeah, and then I can you can use that as just a launching point. Probably as I said those words, you can realize like what I'm getting at.
Right. This could be a
Uh,
treatise.
of these, I should actually write it down. Hey,
You
it's
should.
copyrighted. Anybody who's listening to this,
Too late,
five
I've
pillars of dog
stolen it.
destruction. That's my
No.
yeah, that was my idea. Well, you can steal it. It's okay. But anybody else? That was my idea. Uh, right. Yeah. When you break down any of the any of the ills that are coming along with this epidemic, and I'll call it that. I'll call it what it is. And, you know, enough of beating around the bush and euphemisms and things. This is a downright plague. This is
Yes.
a true pandemic. This dog apocalypse going on here that is harming us. It's harming us on a lot deeper levels than anybody can even really fathom. Because this stuff's going to keep going down the line, and then you think about as for example the resources that are displaced from a human being toward this animal. That's affecting the future of our species right there. Talk about a home, talk about saline, talk about food. These things could all be going to humans for the bolstering and betterment of humans. Um, Also, the resources I would also categorize our intellectual resources, which you're kind of getting at when you're talking about the medical, and you think about, you know, why do you got to have a guy who's going to go to get medical training to take care of dogs?
Right.
When if he's got that sort of intellect and the heart to want to help living things, well, we need doctors. There's
Yes.
there's actually a shortage of good
I have
doctors
a
right
story
now.
about that
Uh,
actually, a short one. But go
oh,
ahead.
really?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, yeah, not too much. One last point. So yeah, it's a squandering of our intellectual resources, and it's a squandering of our emotional resources of people who, throughout the course of their day, a pet owner that they've got all this love to give to somebody. Well, let's give it to a stupid dog who really, it's like casting pearls before the swine. It's funny too, and I've told you this one before, but for the audience, uh, in the Bible, that phrase, "Don't cast pearls before the swine." Like people know this, even if you're not a Christian through cultural osmosis. I'm not a Christian. I'm not proselytizing, just so anyone knows. But religion does have a lot of cultural relevance, so I've taken some time to study it. Anyway, that line, "Do not cast pearls before the swine," everybody knows it, but it's only the second part of a longer verse. It's Matthew 7:13, I believe.
I'm
Uh,
looking it up right now.
yeah,
Yes,
I
Matthew
might have the
7
verse
6.
7:6. I'm sorry. Well, I was thinking of another 13 recently. You know which one that I got conflated there. Um, yeah, Matthew 7:6. Do not give unto dogs that which is holy. Do not cast pearls before the swine. That's the whole line. But everybody conveniently drops the dog part.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And
It's very interesting.
so I have it pulled up so the viewers can see, but it's give not that which is holy unto dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. So yeah, it's like dogs will turn and like rip you to shreds, right? Like they're never
Right.
portrayed in a positive light. And yeah, it's really interesting. I find this happens a lot where verses are, only part of the entire verse or the context is like completely left out, so you get the complete wrong. It's almost like an inversion. And this isn't
Yeah.
necessarily an inversion, but yeah, it leaves out a lot of
But
important, uh, I guess, context
it,
or
it's al- it's a la carte, as they used to say.
yes,
So they're just picking and choosing that which they like, and then leave the rest behind. But again, I'm not proselytizing. I'm not saying that, well, this is the word of God or whatever. But what I'm saying is that this was culturally significant enough of a point to be in these texts, that people back then understood that dogs were a problem. Like, dogs are mentioned over 30 times in the Old Testament alone, and nothing nothing positive. There are no verses like, take care of your cuddly woof woofs or anything. Every time a dog is mentioned, it's in a negative light.
right. And
Is that
getting
they're
back
dangerous?
to, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just, this
No,
topic
I
has
was
kind
going
of,
to say they're either dangerous or dirty, or that they're a metaphor for a sinner. Usually, is what this is the way they're usually dogs are mentioned in those texts. But,
right. And tying into our conversation about, children are going through this horrific foster care system, ending up on the streets. Another interesting verse is Matthew 15:26, and it says, but he answered and said, "It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs."
right.
So another example of, dogs being, should be uh, viewed as something that is not holy and not worthy. And I don't know what the whole context of this is because usually these things are
Certainly,
metaphorical, but you see the cultural understanding
certainly,
of dogs.
certainly not better than children. Is what they're trying to tell you. Yeah.
Right. And that's another
That
thing.
actually is. Oh, you go ahead, please.
I was just going to say with the foster care system too itself, it's like you also have all these people fostering so-called, quote, fostering dogs. Like,
Right.
could these people, it's just kind of gross that You would have people spending their resources, time, homes, opening them to like worthless mutts that have been offering nothing of use to humanity whatsoever. Do they not have any shred of. If you could foster children instead, that would have a much greater impact on bettering our society.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. There's nothing really to even say. It's a better outcome, but what do we have instead? We have dogs with their own bedrooms. They got their own beds and how, yeah, they got a dog house outside. They got a bedroom inside, and they still probably sleep in the owner's bed. They eat at the table. They get the freshest and best of foods. What did we find that one day we were looking at different things like that? Aren't they getting like dog marijuana or something? Like dog
It wouldn't
dog,
surprise
dog
me.
weed?
Let me look.
I thought I saw that somewhere.
It would not
Yeah.
surprise me.
And
But
if you're having trouble with your pet, don't worry. We got dog food banks in place. So and think about that one. A point about resources and how people are picking through their cabinet for like old stuff to give hungry people. But when it comes to a dog food bank, I bet you they go straight to the
they go
store
out
and
and
buy a
buy
brand
it.
new thing.
Yep,
Here's a brand new
1000%.
bag of dog kibble. Yeah, they're not giving you their old bag of dog kibble. Here's a new bag. Here's a crate of dog cans, like canned dog food. Here's some new dog toys. They're not going to give you a used dog toy. They're buy some new dog toys. Yeah,
Right. So I looked it up, and I
yeah.
guess marijuana is toxic to dogs, but it came up with a list of common dog medications and their uses. So let me just read through some of these medications that people are giving to their dogs.
Should be fun.
Antibiotic, which we know there were antibiotic shortages. And there's a vast
Right.
misuse of antibiotics, creating all these strains of antibiotic resistant bacteria. So just imagine what kind of outcomes we could expect to see in the future from people misusing antibiotics on dogs and wasting it on them, really. Insulin
Oh,
treats diabetes in dogs. So we have like fat diabetic dogs now and starving people. And these dogs are taking insulin supplies that could be used for humans. ACE inhibitor says helps heart and kidneys. Steroids, antihistamines because you have dog allergies.
right.
Levoxythyroxine, which is a replacement thyroid hormone. Diuretics, anti-protozoa, heartworm, fleas, blah blah blah.
I've known a couple of those things on those lists. I've known people who need those things and can't afford them.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's
They're getting given to dogs. Yeah.
NSAIDs or
And if you don't think that
NSAIDs.
that doesn't drive up the price at all,
That's yes. I brought this up on a previous call, and I don't know if there's any research we could try to find on like because in the marketplace, things it's kind of competitive, right? Like getting raw materials to make
Mhm.
these drugs. So it makes me wonder, like, how is dog medication acquisition affecting the marketplace? Like you said, like how is the competition between acquiring these resources for dogs inflating the cost or causing scarcity for humans? I don't even know how
But you
you
know
would
why?
research that.
But you know why there is no research on it? Because of cartoon reality.
Mm-hmm.
See, and like nobody thinks like resources are a finite thing. Oh, they just there's just always enough of everything for everybody, and like we can take care of dogs too. Why not? Yeah, it's again that lack of common understanding of like how the sausage is made. Like what makes things work. Uh, disconnect from reality.
Right. Pain management, seizure control medication to control epilepsy, beta blockers, anti-anxiety medication, joint
Right.
support, calcium level regulator, selegaline HCl treats cognitive dysfunction. Like,
Oh, yeah. Well, that one I'm all in favor of dogs getting.
right?
They should
But isn't
do
this
whatever they can.
wild? I mean, the level of. And, like, my next door neighbor, for example, every week she's got these piles of large boxes delivered to her house that are like chewy.com boxes
Mm.
or whatever, like one of these online pet supply websites, she's getting weekly shipments of large boxes from this website delivered on, because I see them, she leaves them sitting outside sometimes for a while, so they'll be piling up on her doorstep. uh and just think about like the whole industry of this, just the amount of resources to send boxes of god knows what to one person, and then multiply that by however many, hundreds of thousands. It's just
Right.
insane with environmental uh, impacts and social impacts. It's like you said, the five pillars. We could have a
Yeah,
show
you're
on
free to
every one of
reference
them.
that. And an unfortunate reality of human society, human existence, is this idea of the free market, and that while it sounds great, it means that endeavor and industry is always going to go toward profit and what people will basically spend money on. So it's not, there's no like overarching, like, here's the most responsible way to allocate our resources. Instead, it's how are we going to make money? And well, there's a bunch of people out there who'll pay good money to take really good care of their dogs. So that's where the industry is going to follow, and I think at a huge detriment to human life. That we're going to invest all this time and energy and resources and money and infrastructure. I mean, you think like there's somebody designing these things. There's somebody taking the actual physical resources that might have been made into something different. No, now we're going to make it into dog toys and dog treats and dog medications, and it's a terrible squandering. Like if you look at it just for the human race, like what a terrible squandering of our gifts and what's available to us to say, we're going to invest so heavily into stupid dogs who do nothing besides spread filth, make noise, and kill children. It's like
Right.
what do dogs do otherwise?
So
Wow, what a messed up. Like the more you lay it out like that, it's pretty messed up, isn't it?
it
We're paying
is.
for that.
Right. And I'm trying to Google if I can find any kind of information. I'll have to like look more. But so far I haven't found anything on like does the massive consumption of medications by dogs contribute to like a decrease in the availability for human, like I can't find anything like that. But what I did find while trying to search for this was an article from 2019, say, and the headline is with human drugs a Silicon Valley startup hopes to deliver precision medicine to dogs. And it says it's in San Francisco. When pet dogs are diagnosed with cancer, they typically get surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation. Now, a Silicon Valley startup wants to offer precision medicine instead by recommending targeted therapies that are normally used to treat humans. For a price tag in the low four figures, depending on the veterinary clinic, the One Health company will sequence a dog's tumor and generate a report with recommendations. The
Yeah,
pitch
that's the
is
free market in action.
That's exactly. The pitch is attracting some high profile interest here in the Bay Area, where it's not unusual for dog owners to spend tens of thousands of dollars to try to keep their beloved pet alive. The company announced on Wednesday that it had raised $5 million in seed funding from top Silicon Valley investors, including venture capital firm Anderson Horowitz and startup accelerator Y Combinator. That's an interesting one. We need to get into that sometime. But anyways, uh, uh,
I saw what you did there. Yeah.
yeah. One Health company is part of a broader effort to bring precision medicine to veterinary medicine, often in the hope of using those insights to inform the way cancer gets treated in humans. A Massachusetts company called Innogenics offers a genomic test for dogs with cancer. Another Silicon Valley startup called Impramed is developing a screening service to help recommend appropriate chemotherapies for dogs with lymphoma.
Why are dogs getting cancer now? Wait a minute. Let's this quick. I mean, besides the absurdity of, I mean, dogs. I mean, not to sound too heartless here, but they don't have a very long lifespan. they get cancer in a later stage of their life. I don't understand why fight that, but why are they getting so much cancer that it would become an industry? That's an interesting question. I
Yeah.
actually now not saying this is the answer, but it does lead me to think about how I've thought before about pet foods and the pet food industry, and how a lot of the dog problem, the dog problem is a multi-headed hellhound. It's got
Right.
many, many different facets, and uh, there's a lot of agendas going on here. But profit is always a huge driving factor, and understand that a big part of our current where we're at is because of the pet food industry. Because when what we used to be, what we know now as the pet food industry, they used to produce farm feed, or back when in more rural times, and people were actually raising cows and chickens and all that stuff, and pigs on their land. They sold low grade farm feed, and as people moved away from farms into cities with industrialization, those same companies were like, well, we got to keep selling our low grade farm feed, and they rebranded themselves, they remarketed themselves into pet food companies, and they were a big part of the initial push to get pets into every American household. And especially dogs, because let's pick the one that's the largest, has the biggest appetite, and we could sell a lot of cheap kibble to these dogs. So this is, I know that's kind of a big paraphrasing of the history, but there's information about this, about how there's a big connection between the pet food industry and the popularization of dogs in the early 20th century.
Right. Well, that's why they
However,
need
I've
to be
thought to
fed
myself,
raw steaks. No.
exactly. Well, here's the thing though. So when you think about what pet food is, it's not something a dog should be eating. Like, really think about it. It's like corn products, turned into, they get like a flavoring, and it's like dogs really, if we cared what they should be eating, they should be eating fresh meat. That's what they're supposed to eat. Uh, or I mean, they'll eat carrion too, but
Right.
whatever. They're supposed to be eating meat, and so pet food, like dry pet food, and even your canned pet food, because it's usually it's not real meat. It's like meat flavored, which means there's no actual meat in it. There's very little meat in little to no meat in packaged pet food. And this is what people are feeding their dogs. And I've often wondered if this improper diet that dogs have, and then that's, again, that's a product of industry. It's a whole industry that wanted to make money off of giving their slop to these animals. Is that contributing to their already deranged behavior? Does it make it, so dogs already have behavior that's like they shouldn't be in our society? But then let's give them something that's like, basically, you're starving their brains. You're not giving them meat and whatnot. Is it going to make them even more crazier and more volatile? Yeah, even more crazier.
Right.
That's right. That was a thought I had. I'm not. I guess I'm kind of theory crafting with you right now. That I think these are possibilities, like pieces of the puzzle.
No, I think it's a definitely a good take to consider. And I would also say, like, could we consider that maybe we shouldn't like just have dogs at all? If like they shouldn't, I don't think that they should be consuming meat, because I think that whatever meat is consumed should be for human consumption. Like,
Right.
if we're factory farming animals for consumption, that's already, posing a lot of ethical questions sometimes with the way they're
Right.
raised and the way they're treated. And now we're like, some insane percentage of that meat is raised that just goes straight to dogs and, turned into like dog crap in somebody's backyard or whatever. Like, on a
Yeah.
planet with starving people, or a country with starving people and homeless people, or people facing food insecurity, like, why are we damaging the environment, raising all these animals in substandard conditions, and just so we can prop up a population of dogs? Partially, like, none of these resources should be going to dogs. And if there's so massive amount of dogs that we need to manufacture this like food you're talking about that's not even suitable for them to be eating, the whole, it just needs to stop, right? Like, it just,
Right.
like, and yeah, like you said, so now this inappropriate diet is causing probably health issues for them. So now we have, like in this article, uh, stories of people spending $30,000 on their dog's cancer
Oh,
care, even while struggling to pay for their children's college education. And she's heard from financially struggling millennials who say they're willing to take on credit card debt to ensure that their dog gets the best cancer care.
I always point out what a crime that is whenever you have children involved. So we
Right,
obviously talk about a lot of the dinkwads. Obviously, children aren't even a factor in this story. But then you do have the individuals who have dogs and children, and I think it's a downright crime, the resources that are funneled away from the children. I had this conversation, and this is one of the reasons I closed. I think I told you right before we got in this call how I just closed my Facebook, I just closed my Reddit. I did like a social media enema. I started a digital enema. I started getting rid of everything. Facebook was the worst, actually. I had a big argument with a guy there about how the dogs are a big waste of resources, and they're just kind of hurling insults, and I'm like, no, no, stop, think about it, think about this. If you're a parent and you have children and you have a dog, and start adding up all the food that you buy for that dog, all the dog toys, all the whatever, grooming, dog sitting, I don't know what even involves costing owning a dog. Add all that up, take that number. Now imagine if those resources, the monetary resources alone, were funneled into the children.
right,
Give them
exactly.
give them private tutoring to give them a head up in life. Have them learn a new language. Get them involved in some kind of activity. There's set aside money for their future. Prepare a college fund. There's all sorts of things that money that the dog is basically siphoning away, like a parasite. It's siphoning away all those resources from the human children to the dog. I used to do a thought exercise. I had a friend a long time ago who was a smoker, and I was always trying to get him to stop smoking. I know, you can't control people or whatever, but
Right,
he was my friend, and that was kind of the basics of it. I would be like, yo, man, how much you spend on cigarettes this week?
right,
Just just the purchases of the cigarettes alone, and that's not counting, well, any future health care that might incur due to illnesses that come from the habit. How may I harm you socially? I mean, there's all sorts of other costs that you can't put into monetary. With dogs, you have, uh, heck, just the attention alone. Those 5 minutes you spend with the dog, you could have been spending with your children, forming a better bond, teaching them something, giving them wisdom, or having them learn a skill that might help them in life. Yeah, this is all. It's all a criminal waste of our resources and our humanity. That's all been funneled away into this very useless creature. I can't see any good. Like there's no good coming from it. And I think the further we get down the road, like the damage is just going to keep stacking up and stacking up.
right,
And you see the children, you said the people with the $30,000 cancer bill and they had children. Like you think those children are going to grow up and one day they might wise up and realize, wait a minute, our parents spent all that money on a dog
right,
and all that time and all that energy, probably like the kid is probably like lonely, sitting alone, wanting some parental guidance in life, or maybe somebody to talk to. But by golly, we got to take the dog to the vet, and then I got to make a social media page for it, and then
right. Oh,
it's a
sorry,
waste,
we can't
terrible waste.
afford tuition this semester because the dog needed cancer treatment to live another year.
Right.
You know what
With
I
its
mean?
with its what with its what 15-year lifespan anyway. I
Right.
mean, yeah,
And this is talking about like
yeah.
payment plans. They might $500 a month
Oh,
or a fee of
that's going to debt.
$1,500 for the life of the dog. Like,
Right.
can you imagine sinking this money? And this is another thing regarding like homelessness and stuff. Imagine if instead of funding the cities funding massive amounts of money being just down the toilet for dog shelters that house these dogs almost indefinitely because nobody wants them. What if instead all of that money went to a community effort to develop some kind of like orphan care, or instead of, I feel like so many kids end up in abusive foster homes. Like there's almost like more screening that goes into you to like, do you have a suitable
Right.
home for to foster this dog? We can only accept foster homes for dogs that have an acre backyard, or you know what I mean, just some kind of insane requirements to make sure you're a good
Yeah,
person, to foster the dog. And it's like, oh, this homeless kid, yeah, just whoever the first person that we can shove him off to. You know, like, why can't we have community? And I don't know that orphanages were better. I don't really know because they didn't exist within my lifetime. That kind of, or like, you know, mental, psychiatric facilities for people. You know, a lot of people with psychiatric problems end up homeless too because there's no social
right.
safety net for that either.
One of the main reasons. Right. It's one of the main reasons, actually.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure a lot of abused
But
kids develop psychiatric problems, so there's probably a
of
decent amount of
course,
overlap there. Like, could we not
and
be
that's
spending
and that's where a
millions?
lot of
Yeah.
addiction comes from. So, so to talk about how all these social ills, they kind of cascade upon one another. You have uh, torment and abuse for a young person, and then they're left with all sorts of trauma that is left undiagnosed and untreated. So then they find some sort of substance that helps them feel not as bad for a little while, and then they try to self-medicate in that regard, and then the next thing you know, now we have a drug problem too, right?
Right.
It all, yeah, all these things just kind of build upon one another. I kind of lost my train. Back to the food production real quick. Just one thing I want to say
Yes. Yep.
about the raising of livestock for the production of meat. You mentioned the ethical issues that arise from that, and how, in my estimation, in my opinion, things like creatures like cows and chickens and pigs, who we view kind of as our primary sources of animal protein, they're far nobler animals than dogs are. So, I mean, that in itself is, they're smarter, they're more empathetic, they're gentler creatures. That,
Yes.
to me, it's like a travesty that we're gonna feed them to worthless, hyper aggressive mutant beasts.
I agree.
There's that. But I also wanted to kind of segue into, because we missed this. We didn't get to do a show for the Dog Meat Festival.
Oh
I know I
yeah,
brought
we
that up
missed
to you.
it. Yes.
I gotta actually, I might still have something here I can pull up as a little bit of a guide on the Yulin Dog Meat Festival, which just passed in 2024. Oh, now they're already talking about 2025.
Yep. Pencil it in for
Well, anyway, it
next
was the
year.
end of June. Yeah, they're already ramping up for next year. So just in case nobody knows, sorry. I hope I'm not. Sometimes I move my microphone, I bump it, and it probably makes a horrible noise. I'm
No,
very
not
sorry about
really.
that.
It a little bit of a like muted sound, but nothing bad.
Clearly, I'm a professional, right? So in China, and this connects to the dog thing, to the food issue, to the food and resources. So don't think I'm just going off the deep end here. But I did want to talk about this. In China, it's no secret that they eat dogs. Okay,
Right.
as much as it may not be a popular thing to talk about, yes, they eat dogs in China. Matter of fact, you can do a fun little experiment on your own. If you go on like Google Earth and actually like scroll over to China, so like you're actually searching in China, and then type Goro, like Goro restaurant, Gourou. Goro is dog meat. So
Oh.
you can type in Goro, and you'll find a mark, like the little the little pips will come up on dog meat restaurants in China. So it's a thing. It's not, it's taboo to talk about, but it is a thing. Okay.
Yes.
And this isn't anything about, like, I'm not like saying, oh, Chinese people, but there is that. See, people will say like, oh, you're talking bad about Chinese people because they eat dogs. Well, wait, well, what's bad about that? Let's stop and let's just analyze, why is that bad? Like, why would that be considered a thing, like an insult? It's not insulting. It's not racist. It's not uh, derogatory to say Chinese people eat dog meat.
Right.
there's, you know, why? Well, because of the ethical issues regarding eating meat. So there's sort of these standards that are set, and there is no real clear line. Like, what makes it ethical to eat one species of animal and not ethical to eat another? So you can eat a cow, you can eat a chicken, you can eat a pig,
You can eat
you can
sheep.
eat an
You can
alligator, you
eat
can eat a
ducks.
bear, you can eat a duck, you can eat a beer, eat goats. I mean, you get the point. I can go on and on. There's all these different
Frogs.
animals, but yet somehow, right? Yeah, frogs. Like, how much protein do you get from that? You can eat frogs. There's all sorts of different things that are acceptable, socially acceptable, yet it's taboo to eat a dog.
Right.
Now, personally, I wouldn't eat a dog because I know how parasite ridden they are. Like I don't care how much you cook it. Like I wouldn't eat it because I wouldn't consider it safe to eat.
Right.
But I'm not ethically opposed to it.
No, why?
If you
How
love it,
could you be? How could you be someone that eats meat and, yeah, like what would your argument even be? Like dogs are
that's
smart,
some,
dogs are our pets, dogs are. One I've heard is like dogs are carnivores, so you shouldn't eat carnivores, but that's not really that's more like along the lines you're saying. They're like parasite ridden.
oh,
Uh, and
well, and there's
pigs
plenty
are
of
often
examples on the
known.
list.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's other we eat other carnivores. Yeah, that's
like bears. You
what about
mentioned
pigs now?
people eat bears. Well, pigs are
Yeah.
often known as being like susceptible to a lot of parasites, and I know people that go hog hunting and they will only eat like the young ones generally because they say the older ones are just too riddled with parasites. But they're more treated like a varmint, like they're shot and maybe not eaten. Um,
Right. Pigs are
but
actually quite smart, by the way, just as
yeah,
an aside. Talk about like that we raise these animals and feed them to dogs, what a travesty it is. I mean, pigs are literally smarter than dogs. They're
right.
smarter, they're more empathetic. I
I've
mean, heck,
heard they're
they can
cleaner
solve
too
puzzles and
naturally.
stuff. I've heard from farmers that whereas most farm animals they'll defecate and urinate wherever, like they'll right in the pen, right where they're going to sleep. They'll go ahead and urinate there, right?
Right.
But pigs won't. Like pigs actually know, even though they have a reputation for being filthy. Actually, they understand. Like, don't sleep where you shit.
Right.
They actually know that.
Actually,
Yeah,
camelids are the same, and those are eaten. So camels, alpacas, llamas, those animals are raised for
and they're all
food.
adorable. I
They're
mean, we talk
adorable.
about
I
like, yeah,
know. I love them. They're one of my favorite animals too, like camels and alpacas and stuff. But they will go. They tend to use one area of the pasture as like their waste area. So they'll have like one area of the pasture where they'll go to poop and stuff. It won't be like cows where it's just all over. But that's another point, and we talked about this before on animal control voice chat. Um, most of these animals' waste actually isn't even uh, harmful to the environment. Like a cow's
right.
waste and a sheep's waste and rabbits and chickens, even all of these animals' waste can be used as fertilizer. It
Right. They're
can be
beneficial.
composted.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Right.
harm the earth. It can actually cause the earth to become more like I know some people who are really into farming and homesteading, and they have different grazing rotations that they'll
Mhm.
do. So they'll graze like their cows, for example, in one section of pasture, and then move the cows to another section and let another animal come in behind it, like chickens. And it actually really benefits the whole ecology of the land. Whereas we know
Yeah.
that dog waste is the exact opposite case. It'll kill the grass. It'll kill the earth. Uh, it's harmful. It's not used
It's
as compost or fertilizer because it would contaminate the ground instead of
right.
provide nutrients back. Because if you think about it, like you said, dogs are eating a disgusting diet of things they shouldn't eat, and even their natural diet would include they eat poop, they eat dead animals, they roll around in it, they eat their own vomit, like they're
And they're
riddled with
riddled with parasites.
parasites. Yeah, their urine is naturally extremely, I think, like acidic or something. It'll kill
Correct.
plant
Yeah.
life.
Kills
It'll,
plant life.
yeah, it'll essentially salt the
The
earth. You know what I mean? Like,
the solid. Oh yeah. Oh, that's a great. Oh, that's a great metaphor. No, that's yeah, like salt earth strategy. You want to lay waste to your enemies so they can't ever use that land again. Just give them a bunch of dogs. No, the solid waste left unattended takes 6 weeks to break down. So like if you see like left out on a on a not a dog trail. Well, everything's a dog trail. I'm sorry. Yeah, if
right,
you go out and you go out on a trail, yeah. Well, silly me. I forgot that everything is a dog trail. Yeah, you go out and you see some other animal's waste, and then if you come back a couple days later, it's gone. But not dog waste. It's there. It stays there, and it stays about 6 weeks. And even after it's visually gone, it's still a very dangerous site with the parasites and the bacteria it leaves behind. So they're extremely toxic animals. They're again my five pillars of dog destruction, and
Right.
environment is one of them. They just destroy. They destroy the environment. They consume resources that could be better used elsewhere, and they just destroy everything in sight.
Yes. Well, like
Yeah. Are you?
my land where there were sheep on it, the grass is better. It grows back greener. It's like fertilized. It's good. My neighbor's backyard is almost entirely dead now. It's just bare
Wow.
dirt, and because the dogs, I God wouldn't even want to go look take a closer look at her backyard, but just from what I can see, it went from being, you know, I think I mentioned this. It's a brand new home, which is another thing that pissed me off regarding our conversation earlier about home buyers.
Right.
Brand new construction. Uh, so they laid down 10,000 square feet of fresh sod, and all of that has been completely destroyed. All that grass is
Wow.
dead. It's nothing. It's bare dirt now where the dogs are. Yeah, they've just completely contaminated it. I would never want to grow anything back there. Nothing could grow as long as the dogs were still there. Um,
Right.
I think
Well, probably
animal.
for many years after, it's not going to be able to
Exactly.
recover.
It's like a Superfund site now. It's like toxic waste dump.
Yeah. It's uh, so the dog meat festival uh, happens at the summer solstice every year in a little town in China called Yulin. And it's, I don't know if you've pulled up anything. I'm not, just so anybody knows, I'm not actually, we're not screen sharing. So I'm talking blind just because we found that it creates too much overload on the voice call. So I don't know if you pulled up anything on the dog
Yeah, I
meat. Some
have
of it
the
might be not
Wikipedia
straightforward.
page pulled up right now.
Oh, yeah, good. Uh, I think, I mean, you think like your local festivals, how you have all the little merchant, like the little merchant stalls and people selling their wares and little tasty treats and things. And it's like, well, and they got like dogs, they got dog jerky and dog stew, and there's dogs hanging up on racks, and getting ready to be fed. But I think the fun one too is that there's they have live dogs on site too in little cages.
Mm-hmm.
They're because over the course of the festival, they'll get to them too, right?
Right.
So. Um, it looks like fun for all ages, is what I'm trying to say. But the interesting thing I think about this, back to the ethical nature of it, is there's actual protesters that show up at this festival. Gets a lot of publicity. People actually show up there and they try to rescue the dogs, and they'll like buy the ones that are in the cages. And they'll like because you're gonna well you're gonna sell them and eat them, right? Well, I'll pay you. Let me take the dog. And there was some story about some crazy Chinese woman, and she had like, I forget how many they said. It was some crazy amount of dogs she picked up from the dog meat festival every year. She keeps bringing them home. Um, this idea of if we're going to create this ethical standard that we can eat every other form of living thing, use it as a resource, except dogs, I think we need to take a closer look at this. Like, what's really driving this sort of this standard, which isn't shared entirely by the world, which is why the dog meat festival is so fascinating to me. That it's clearly a thing like, well, hey, we're gonna eat them.
Right.
We don't think that they're like too good to be eaten.
Um, well, it's interesting too because China is always the one talked about, I guess, because they make a festival out of it that's pretty like well known worldwide now. But I've found out that dogs are eaten in many other parts of the world too. Like I've seen, I was actually researching the Yulin Dog Meat Festival at one time, and came across a lot of videos from parts of Africa and I think maybe like the Caribbean.
Mm,
And then I personally knew, so I work in a field with a lot of people from India. And I've had conversations, and these conversations are interesting to me because I think they demonstrate strongly how culturally brainwashed the West has been with regards to dogs being kind of a sacred animal. Because
yeah.
none of my Indian colleagues have ever expressed um, distaste towards my views on dogs to the extent that I've talked about it. And I actually found out from a previous coworker that in parts of northern India, dogs are eaten and considered even like a delicacy um,
Hmm.
there. And I think it's interesting because, oh, and I also have done research. When I was researching the brood parasite theory, I found some articles talking about the history of dog domestication, which I think is a topic we should get into sometime. Because
Hmm.
basically, what I've come to conclude is that our history of the dog has been has been is basically a lie. Um, so generally, people will
Yeah,
have this concept that dogs and humans co-evolved and it was almost a symbiotic relationship. Some people even saying that
I don't buy it.
no, me either, and there's evidence to contradict it, which is interesting. Some nutters even take it so far as to say that dogs directed human evolution and like we're better
Right.
because of dogs and things like that, like real insane stuff. But what I found
Well, see,
was
that's the brain parasites talking.
exactly,
That's
yes. What I found was there was actually a lot of evidence to the contrary, and a lot of evidence that at some point in history, dogs were actually even farmed for food by
Hmm.
humans. And
Yeah, it
I
would
think,
make sense.
yeah, and I think that maybe in certain parts of the world has carried into today, like China, for example. Maybe this isn't some newfangled, horrible, mistreatment of dogs by this barbaric culture, but more of a continuation of the use of
Right.
dogs as it has been throughout all of history as a source of meat and sometimes maybe a source of labor. Dogs might have been used to labor in different ways, but a beast of burden, similar to a cow or like food, you know.
Oh,
I think they have like talking about being in touch with reality. Uh, People in the West find the dog meat festival distasteful, barbaric, and all that. But I think maybe we're the ones that are detached from reality, and they're the ones still more in line with reality and what dogs have been used
exactly.
for throughout time. You know,
Exactly. Western dog culture is the anomaly.
right,
The rest of the world who still eats dogs, that's just the way it's been. Yeah.
right, and they
And
just
actually,
continue.
I was looking into some history on the Dog Meat Festival myself way back when I was going to talk about it. God, see how time flies. Uh, and I did come across in the old, like in old Chinese writings, how they actually did breed dogs for specific purposes. So they had dogs that were bred for war, like warfare or guarding, and they had dogs that were bred for food, and they had dogs that were bred as pets. And the ones that were bred for pets were like the little tiny one. I guess even centuries ago, they had like little toy dogs, kind of like, now you have the people with the annoying little rat dog things that they want to pop in a shopping cart and take around the grocery store. Yeah, that's always been a thing, apparently. But they also bred them for food, and they also bred them for labor and labor and combat. So yeah, this modern dog culture in the West is the anomaly to the state of how things have been throughout human history. And dogs, this idea that they somehow directed our evolution or even that they co-evolved with us. I think that's more of that cartoon reality stuff that's very little basis
Yes, exactly. It's a
in
constructed
any
narrative
dog.
to, I guess, for feel
I
good
mean,
reasons.
people say people say dogs are man's best friend, but if you look historically, that was the horse. Horse was man's best friend throughout
Right.
history, as far as a beast of burden, and as far as they used in everything: warfare, labor, transportation, food when necessary. It truly was man's best friend, and they just switched that moniker, like I said, when industrialization brought about the change of the how the farm feed companies became pet food companies. That's when the term came into being, that dogs would be man's best friend, and they tried to sell everybody on the idea to have a stupid, bottomless pit flea bag of a companion in your home, right?
Right.
Inside your home where it shouldn't be. Because people weren't farming anymore. Now they got to have an animal in their house. Yeah, which
Definitely.
I find that to be a little bit of a dirty and distasteful way to live. That's
I
just me.
1000% agree. And yeah, I definitely think that it's worth a longer conversation, but it seems to me, based on the evidence that I've read, that, dogs were a branch off of wolves uh, that's basically lived kind of on the edges and outskirts of human settlements, um, and over time, like, developed physical traits that were able to capitalize on taking advantage of our oxytocin pathway, like you said. Like, wolves don't have the muscle above their eye that causes
Mm,
the eyelid or what looks like an eyebrow to move. That
right,
people think their dog's making facial expressions and stuff like that, but that's just an
right,
evolutionary, uh, I guess, development that
right.
proved useful to some of these what were called like proto dogs. Um, so it's not like that they're expressing anything. It's that the ones that were able to move that muscle got favored by people because people interpreted that little movement as like, oh, he's expressing some kind of emotion. He's like me. He's just
Right,
like a child or something. The puppy dog
right.
eyes are actually just a
It's
evolutionary
an accident
trait.
of evolution.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, an unfortunate accident for
an accident of
us.
evolution.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
like with
very
other brood
unfortunate. Yeah.
parasites, they developed, certain bird species developed. There's a scientific term for this, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's like hyper uh, similar behaviors or traits. So, like the cuckoo bird, for example, and birds like that are brood parasites, when the baby bird of the cuckoo hatches in the nest of the unwitting other bird species, it
Right.
actually produces sounds and has bigger eyes and a bigger, brighter colored mouth. It's like hyper attractive to the unwitting
Mm.
parent. Like it
Feed
gains
me.
more. Yes, feed me, feed me. It's louder than the actual offspring, and it often
Yeah.
kicks the actual offspring out of the nest entirely and kills them.
Yeah.
But the mother bird is attuned to these traits, and so yeah, the cuckoo bird doesn't love the sparrow or whatever it is. It doesn't express its gratitude and affection when it's screeching for food. That's just how it evolved to take advantage of that bird. I think dogs are very similar in that way.
Nature's pretty brutal. It's not a Disney film. It's
Exactly.
not a Disney princess film. So yeah, dogs have the same. That's like the pit bull smile. I was thinking about that. The
Right.
alleged smile that pit bulls have. Like that has they're not expressing an emotion through the muscles in their face the same way that a human being does. I mean, it's foolishness to think that. It has to do with the shape of their jaw. So any animal with a strong bite force usually has that kind of upturn at the jaw there. Like think of like a crocodile. They have that same. That's why they say crocodile smiles. It's 'cause it's actually telling you that they have a very dangerous bite. That's what their smile tells you.
Exactly.
But and it also allows them to breathe. Uh, that little upturn there, kind of like when they're holding on to a limb in their jaw, that upturn there allows them to continue to breathe through their mouth, like in case their nose gets obstructed, and like then they can continue to still breathe uh, through those kind of like little openings up on the top there. So the better to maul you with, my dear.
Exactly.
It's not a smile like they're happy to see you.
No.
It's just and that's again that disconnect from reality. Like when I see people put pictures up of dogs and they think they're posting something cute. You know what I'm talking about. All these dog memes or people posting pictures of their stupid individual mutts and like, oh, look at how adorable he is and whatever. I'm like, that thing's terrifying. What are you talking about? And then it'll be like it's baring its fangs or it's got some goofy like it's looking at something like it's about to pounce on it. Like what 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 phase of reality? I mean, do you realize what all these signals are pointing to? That's not cute. It's not cute. Yeah.
Totally agree. It's kind of maddening, but People have been taken
Is
over
it
by
is
the
a lot.
parasite. Like, what? I mean, it's like you said, like, you're not talking to them anymore, you're talking to the brain worm. Like,
The worms of the worms of the worms. Have you
yes.
ever seen have you ever seen stupid animal videos? I shouldn't say stupid animal. I gotta say stupid dog. Like you gotta be specific because animal can mean a beautiful thing from nature, right? But
Right.
dogs are clearly something different, and they're a problem. Have you ever seen a stupid dog video where it's usually done in text, but sometimes they use a voice. The dog is doing something stupid that dogs do, and then there's some text along with the video saying like it's like the dog talking to you. Well, I
Oh,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
this looks delicious. I better investigate this. And
Right.
then it's like giving you this narrative like the dog is talking to you and explaining away its behavior. And it explains things that I don't know how to put it. Like there's no way that it can possibly be. Well, I feel this way about this subject or whatever. I mean, it almost would help if I had an example, but I was just thinking of this. Just how stupid this is and the amount of projection that goes on when dog owners like that one I had on the trail. I don't know if I told you the story with the dog that unleashed came at me on the trail. And this is one of the times that the shouting at it worked. Right? It's one of the times.
Right.
But when the owner finally caught up, she was like, "Oh no, he wasn't going to attack you." Like the dog had run at me. She's
Right.
way back there, like 300 feet back. The dog come running at me. And once it got like about 10 feet from me is when I basically barked at it. I did it all, I wound up all my voice and mustered it into one big, deep, booming, oh,
Right.
and it stopped in its tracks. But as we talked about before, I'm not saying that's going to work every time. It just works sometimes. Um, yeah, when she finally caught up to it, she's like, "Oh no, he wasn't going to attack you. He thought that you were my husband, and he was going to greet you." She starts like
What?
giving this narrative to the dog and its intention. Like, "Oh, you're like the dog whisperer now? You can speak you can
Right.
speak dog wag, dog tail?" She said, "Yeah." And his tail was wagging. So, he was just being friendly. He thought you were my husband. Like this amount of insane projection that like you can interpret, "Well, this is what the dog is thinking and this is what it wants." Yeah.
That's what makes it so dangerous. These people
Right.
project their own thoughts onto this wild, out of control, dangerous, fanged creature, and then they turn around and are shocked when it actually does bite someone or kill someone. And it's like it was showing you these signs all along. Like, plus its very nature, it's designed to hunt and attack and kill things. So yeah, you're living in fantasy la la land, creating these narratives to describe the very obvious behavior as something that it's clearly not. And you're endangering everyone around you in the process. That's really, to me, dog ownership in a nutshell.
That might be a great title for this segment. Something to do with living in La La Land.
Yes.
That was a recurring theme, that this sort of disconnect from reality that's involved with dog culture.
Yeah, I think.
That that is not it's not entirely. Now, here's the other thing about this, and I'm not going to launch off into this whole explanation, but you got to think that this isn't necessarily the cause of everything, that it's a symptom of something greater. Like this, the dog culture isn't the root of the problem. The dog culture is a symptom of this disconnect from reality and other things. It's like mental illness turned incarnate. It's
Right.
like, yeah, yeah. There's maybe some deeper issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
sure, we need to get rid of the dog, but so that we don't just move from that to something else, maybe we need to look at what's causing this
Yeah, honestly. It's
sort of
hard
disconnect.
to decipher because it's like, what came first, like the dog or the nuttery? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's an
yeah,
interesting. I mean, if dogs were gone, what would these people replace dog with? It's an interesting question. I've never
right.
really considered because they seem so devoted to dog, but would they just shift all of that devotion to some other creature? It's hard to even imagine what that creature
Right.
would
I think
be.
without addressing whatever the core of this is, it's going to just move on to something else. It'll move on to the next stupid thing.
Right.
And the dogs is just a current stupid thing. You know, and this, if you think about how this has exploded, I mean, the dog nuttery has always been a thing, but how it's really exploded over the past decade or so. Um, yeah, one would think if magically, if there were a benevolent creator that would just, you know, snap their fingers and say, okay, you've had enough fun with these stupid things, and wipe it clean. You know, what would the next stupid thing be? Yeah, we got to get to the core of it, and a
Right.
lot of it is a lot. I'll try to end on this because I think we're. I don't know about you. I know I'm winding down a bit. I'm
Yeah, we're coming up on. Let me
kind of.
look. Oh,
Yeah.
we're at like
I
three
was past.
hours.
Yeah, I know. I know. I said I had a time limit, and I'm just gonna have to scramble to do my thing. It'll be all right, but um, you know, this was a good one. This was I thought was going pretty good.
I
So, and
agree,
it's
and it's been a
so
long time, so we had a lot to talk about.
right. And you gotta, you know, like I say, you gotta strike when the iron's hot, and you know, it's hard to line things up sometimes. So it's nice to have a talk with you, but um, and now I kind of lost my. I was gonna kind of close on a point, and I was lose my point.
Uh, what is the underlying cause? What is maybe?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
underlying cause, stupid thing. Last 10 years. Uh, wow. I guess I'll have to go back and watch the video. I can't remember it. So
Well,
maybe next time.
I guess my closing thoughts are just yeah, this was a good talk. We covered a lot of ground. I think we opened a lot of avenues that we could explore further that deserve a little more uh, detail. I didn't really prep for this. It was kind of an off the spur of the moment call, which I like. Actually, I think it
Yeah.
flows really organically. But yeah, we have some topics we can delve further into. And I think we should maybe,
If,
if we can, do some more frequently uh, so we can have like different topics that we cover more in depth.
yeah. Yeah, I'd like it too. If you know, we don't have to strictly adhere to it, but if you have a general topic or two that you want to touch upon in the show, that I think that does help to have that sort of guide. Then I can look up specific data. We
Right.
all love data.
Yes.
We love our data over here. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, and I think I'll close it out now.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Uh-huh. Talk later.
Take care. Bye.